Good evening, my fellow Americans. This is your President Samuel Ronan speaking, and today is Taco Tuesdays, a new week of streaming, a new week of news and politics, and let me tell you, it is going to be juicy today. Honestly, it's not even about the dystopian nightmare at this point. It's just what bananas, just jaw-dropping breaking news can we find and talk about between now and tomorrow and Thursday, because this past week has been insane. So much has been dropped. So much has been dropped about the Epstein Files. So much has been dropped about Venezuela. So much has been dropped about just Congress in general. ICE misbehaving. Apparently, ICE is now trying to deport indigenous, native, tribal, card-carrying members of society. So the heights of fascism that we are now reaching in this country continue to rise, or as said differently, the lows that we are reaching in this country continue to seek new and more impressive lows than what has been seen before. So with that being said, we definitely have an interesting playlist ahead of us, and honestly, we gotta figure out what we can do about it as a country, as a stream, as a platform. We really need to start putting our little two brain cells together and figuring this thing out, because it is not getting any better. That being said, this Thursday we will not be streaming on account of I will be making my debut as a congressional candidate in Ohio's 15th congressional district, and it's a bit of a drive, so we're not going to be able to stream on Thursday. So this week's schedule will be minus the Thursday. Other than that, business as usual. We will be here tomorrow, and we will maybe even have some good news to share globally from our worldwide Wednesdays, right? But the following Tuesday, maybe we can say how good that went. Maybe I can showcase some of the video footage that will have been taken there as well. So, without any further ado, let's get into the actual stream, the videos. Of course, welcome, Anna. I wasn't ignoring you. Let's just start off strong. ICE almost deported a Native woman, which is like the least deportable person that you could ever not deport. A Native American was here before we were, before America was even a thing, and ICE tried to deport a Native American. I can't. But let's hear this story. If it would load. No?
You won't believe this.
I
ICE
already
just
don't.
tried to deport a woman, but there was one glaring problem. She was Native American. Yes, you heard that right. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the agency tasked with deporting undocumented immigrants, almost deported an Indigenous woman whose ancestors have lived here for thousands of years.
I want to be very clear on something. ICE's role is not to deport illegal immigrants. It's supposed to be the immigration contraband enforcement, right? Or you know what? Now I forgot what ICE stood for. Son of a gun. ICE stands for what? Because I'm dumb. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Okay, whatever. That's what ICE is there for. If you're trying to bring things illegally over to the country, or if you are a person that is coming illegally over to the country, they're there to make sure that that doesn't happen, or to figure out where it fell. They're also the liaison to make sure it doesn't happen. They are the way to do things the right way. Hey, you want to bring in stuff? Go through ICE. Hey, you want to come here? Go through ICE. Like, this isn't... ICE's job isn't to be the Gestapo. That's what they are now. But if we're casually reporting on the fact that ICE is here to deport illegal immigrants, then we've already lost the game. Like, we've already lost all of our sauce, okay? If we're just casually stating that ICE exists to deport people from this country and nothing else, then, we are not a democracy to begin with. We haven't been since this administration got off the ground. But, like, if we're just all going to concede the fact that ICE just exists to instill terror on black and brown folks, then, like, guys, we need to start acting promptly, quite promptly. So, and thank you for filling that in, Anna. I appreciate that.
Letitia Jacobo, just 24 years old, is a member of Arizona's Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. She was born in Phoenix. Yet, that didn't stop ICE from trying to send her back to a country she has no connection to. Here's what happened. Jacobo was in a Polk County, Iowa jail after being booked for allegedly driving with a suspended license, a minor, nonviolent offense. Her mother, Erica Burns, was on her way to pick her up when she got shocking news. She's not being released. ICE is coming to deport her, the jail staff said. Her mother was stunned. How can you deport her? She's Native American, she demanded. The staff's response? A shrug. They claimed they were just holding her for ICE, and no...
During Nazi Germany's history, shall we say, it wasn't even the cruelty, the violence, the abuse, or the fascism of the Nazi Party, the Gestapo, the SS, right? It was also every single citizen and every single agent of the state who was just following orders and doing what they were told. These cops just shrugging their shoulders saying, not my problem, ICE is coming to get her, when she is a Native American, which, again, if you're Native American in America, you typically have a card, which I don't really like that, but hey, if you're Indigenous, you have a tribal identification. Tribal identification that you are literally a card-carrying member of an Indigenous tribe. And during booking, you would have to verify that person's identity to book them, to charge them, make sure it's who they say they are and what they're doing. So this sheriff's department, small county, whatever, knew this lady was a Native American, still called ICE on her, and then shrugged their shoulders when it all came up. This is how insidious this nonsense is. And it's getting even worse, even more out of pocket, because what we are seeing in the news is the New Yorks, the Portlands, the LAs, the Chicagos, right? Those are all the places where ICE, being the big, bad, scary, evil monster, is being heavily, heavily portrayed. Except it's happening everywhere. It's happening in this small town in Arizona, right? It's happening in Columbus, Ohio. It's happening in Missouri. It's happening in Michigan. It's happening in Memphis, Tennessee, but nobody wants to talk about it, right? These things are not isolated incidents. This is a collaborative, deliberate attempt to terrorize black and brown communities through a government force, through a government policing force. And quite frankly, that should be the most deeply concerning thing to impact all Americans everywhere. Because if you can be disappeared for being brown, at what point does that stop them from being able to disappear you, regardless of your background or ethnicity? That's where we're heading to. And the fact that it can happen to an Indigenous woman means it can absolutely happen to you. So,
nobody could explain why this was happening. What followed was a frantic battle. Jacobo's family contacted tribal leaders, posted pleas on social media, and even brought her birth certificate to the jail to prove she is an American citizen. Hours passed. Tension mounted. ICE was still preparing to take her. Finally, after an agonizing overnight standoff, Letitia Jacobo was released. Around 4:30 in the morning, she was safe. But the reason ICE gave? A clerical error. Lieutenant Mark Chance of the Polk County Sheriff's Office casually called it human error. Just a mix-up, he said, meant for someone else, accidentally attached to Jacobo's file. Annoyed. Silly, he called it. But this wasn't silly. This was the attempted deportation of a woman from her own country. A woman whose people are the original inhabitants of this land. This shocking case shows exactly what can happen when an agency like ICE has unchecked power, where clerical errors can ruin lives, and where systemic mistakes target real human beings.
I don't know if this is another AI slop channel, but this story and the way it was being presented is absolutely correct. The sheriff's department was just like, sorry, made a mistake, clerical error. We just, we're threatening to send you to a place that you don't belong, and ignored the fact that you were an American, even despite showing a birth certificate, which is government form of personal identification. Like, at that point, first of all, it should have never gotten to that point, but at that point, once the identification had been made that she is an American citizen, ICE should have been backed off. And the sheriff's county office should have been on her side at that point, forcing ICE to back off, not capitulating. Which brings us back to an even bigger problem. Law enforcement in the United States of America is racist, especially in the smaller towns, rural areas, where the police are the authority and the law and the judge, the jury, and the executioner. Whatever they say goes, because they literally have all the power in those places. There aren't lawyers that are civil defense attorneys or tribal leaders or something like that in all of these small rural towns. And so cops rely on their own power and their own judgment and oftentimes their own biases to get them through the day. Now, I don't know about you, but have you ever challenged your boss or your supervisor at work? Now imagine how well that went for you, and they weren't armed and specifically racist. Just, they weren't any more or less racist than your average other American. Now imagine that your boss or supervisor was not only racist, had an absolute just little man complex, was given a badge, an authority to kill, and a gun, and you had the same interaction with them. How do you think that's going to go? Well, that's how it goes with all of these small town cops, police, and sheriff's departments, and it's 10,000 times worse if you're Indigenous. Never mind an Indigenous woman. And it's even worse. It's less worse if you're Latino, less worse if you're Black or Arab or Asian or some sort of other demographic, but it is the worst if you're Indigenous. Why? Because we never stop playing cowboys and Indians in this country. And quite frankly, if this country could get away with murdering all of the remaining tribes, they fucking would. This has never once ceased. This has never once been subtle. This has never once been on a waning factor where Indigenous peoples are being welcomed into American society, integrated into our communities, into our way of life, and without the extra harassment of, we're just going to, isolate you on your tribal lands and make sure that you live in extreme poverty. Not once in our nation's history has the United States of America ever tried to make amends to the people we conquered and committed genocide against. So this story is especially heinous because of the hundreds of years of history behind it. Just like when ICE agents seemingly target Black folks or Hispanic folks. Again, Mexicans generally, like Mexican Americans, Mexicans generally, they're also Indigenous, and they are not respected as Indigenous peoples. They are not treated as Indigenous peoples. Despite the Mexico-American War, the Mexican military losing and ceding half of its land to the United States of America, that then created the West from I believe it was the Rocky Mountains over, right? So we fought a war against Indigenous people, won that war against Indigenous people, and then don't recognize an overwhelming majority of those Indigenous people as Indigenous. Now, why am I harping on this so heavily? Indigenous populations are a small fraction of the whole that is being targeted by ICE, which is predominantly Latin. Well, that's the point. This is still colonizing. We are still colonizing. To this very day, we are colonizing North America. But instead of murdering people in their homes and on their lands, we've already done that. Now we're purging them for being immigrants, for being workers, for being day laborers. We're purging them to improve our pure American whiteness, European background, whatever the case may be, right? That is still colonization, still genocide. And that has not ceased at any point in time in our nation's history. And now we are reaching the apex of that moment. Now we are reaching the pinnacle of the white settler colonialism stage that seems to be running a furor throughout all of Europe. Because we see Africa shrugging off the yoke of imperialism, refusing the IMF. We see it happening in Latin America. And then those people still flee to Europe because then Europe and or America decides to destabilize those regions even further to reassert their control, their colonial authority. And the worst part is that this wheel keeps building and circling around and around and around. We invade Latin America. We cause problems in Africa. We get migrants and refugees to go north. We welcome them in, give them the shit work that we don't want to do. And then when things are stabilized, we terrorize them to leave and never come back, or kill them, or make it worse for them generally. That cycle of genocide, that cycle of colonization, is now coming to a head where we can no longer sustain it, because not only are we doing this with genocide and refugees and immigration, now capitalism is deteriorating every infrastructure and institution in our country as well. So meanwhile, we're doing the colonization stuff. We're also purging our own government and our own infrastructure, causing unfathomable harm to our own country, to our own citizens, to our own institutions, our own economy. We don't even know the full ramifications of the 43-day government shutdown. We don't actually know the full ramifications of 41 people losing SNAP benefits for 1 month, especially if they have to reapply, and especially if those monies take weeks, days, months to get out again. We are crippling ourselves for the sake of one man's ego and one party's effort to finally achieve their stated goal, or unstated goal, I suppose, of eradicating the Constitution and declaring themselves as an imperial or monarchical power. And we cannot be quiet about this. Yes, immigration is a hot button topic, and maybe the way I'm talking about it isn't. However, if we don't address the issues as they are, genocidal and colonizing, we are never going to recognize the problem for what it is, and we're never going to be able to address it for the problem that it is. So, which brings us to Israel. Why would we be talking about Israel on Taco Tuesdays on American politics and policies? Well,
let's move to landlords, shall we?
Because Israeli-owned corporate landlords are behind many of the U.S. evictions, which means foreign-owned corporations own a lot of our real estate and are dictating the terms to our rising cost of living, our rent, our housing market, the whole 9 yards. Meaning, Israel is not only committing genocide against Palestinians, taking our tax dollars to do it, they're also using our tax dollars to enrich themselves in Israel, to give themselves universal health care, education, so on and so forth. And on top of that, Israeli businesses are going back to America to make us suffer more for their own benefit. Again, this circle of colonizing and recolonizing for the sake of control. That's the rub here.
I've been wanting to cover this story. I just think, again, classic, just nobody wants to touch it because of spooky labels around anti-Semitism, etc. Let's just say from the top, this is not in any way anti-Semitic. What we're trying to do is just cover the story of housing, which the nation highlighted in a way that I have seen very rarely reported on from the New York Times or from anybody else. So they're the people who did the work, and so they're going to get the credit for it. And of course, the only reason that it's not being able to be published anywhere else is because people are afraid of being criticized. So let's put this up here on the screen. What the nation did is highlighted, quote, the Eviction Kings, one of Israel's biggest companies, how it's taking over huge swaths of U.S. real estate and how tenants are paying the price. So they
Now, mind you, corporate real estate, corporate ownership of real estate, and I'm not talking about just apartment buildings, which in of itself is a problem, but we're also talking about single-family homes, standalone homes, right? Whenever you go to the suburbs and you see all those things, more often than not nowadays, those are actual rental properties. People don't own them. People live there, but don't own them. Many suburbs have turned into rental communities. And I can say that with actual emphasis across the country, because I worked and lived in Indianapolis, and I saw suburbs that were thriving years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, are now rental hellholes. I went to New Hampshire, and I saw the exact same thing. And I've been in Ohio most of my working life, but the idea is a lot of the places that were suburbs, that were families that bought and owned homes, are now being turned into rental properties and rental communities. Yeah, some of them are small corporations or small rental owners or whatever else, but the big players are gobbling up the major cities. Most notably, or notoriously perhaps, would be places like Atlanta, New York, Memphis, Columbus, Ohio, Chicago, Detroit, right? Los Angeles, San Francisco. All of the major cities in our country are being gobbled up by these corporations, and then we're being sold our livelihood back to us at an inflated price, which is perpetuating and exacerbating the housing bubble right now. And you know what the worst part is? This already happened in America. We already played this song and dance in 2008 when the bubble and the economy crashed. And what did we do? We bailed out banks and lenders and financial companies. We did not bail out the people. And it happened again in 2012. And now it seems as though it's happening again in 2025. So,
specifically highlight these stories about how a company, for example, they highlight this one person who went down and during an eviction hearing, and they say, how did you get to court? Quote, he could have told her about the company that bought Conrad at Concord Mills in Charlotte, North Carolina in March of 2022, the one that they had installed a new slew of gadgets that he said he didn't need before raising rent by nearly $400 a month. He could have told her about eviction notices that the company kept filing against him, the ones that came, he says, with an onslaught of fees that virtually guaranteed he'd never be able to fully back into his feet. He could have told her about the accident that ended up tearing up his leg 2 weeks prior, causing him to need help just to get from his parked truck into the courtroom, talked about going through it because he had nowhere else to go. In the eyes of the court, it didn't matter. He owed money that he didn't have, so he was thrown out in May of 2024 and spent the...
And that brings up another point. What is the difference between modern landlords and feudal lords? Let me ask that again, because that might not have been clear. What is the difference between a modern landlord and a feudal lord from the Middle Ages? What is the functional difference between them? Nothing. The answer is nothing, right? A landlord may not have an official title that means anything, but they own land and property. And what do all laws protect in this country, in any country? Typically, property. Far more than it does the people. Our criminal justice system treats poverty as a crime and treats ownership of assets or the access to capital as justice. So a landlord evicting somebody who fell on tough times is always going to be protected by the court because, well, it's not the landlord's fault that they can't pay, so you got to evict them because that's your asset, your investment, your capital, and that is what we are going to protect. Never mind that the human being, the living, breathing human being who had an accident, who needs a place to live still and doesn't have the means to live on their own clearly because otherwise they wouldn't be getting evicted, is being kicked out and then having an eviction on their public record or whatever else may be while still needing medical care. Our country is cruel. It is violent towards the poor. And that is what we need to fundamentally change. We can talk about policy this, high-speed rail that, get rid of ICE this, la guillotine. We can talk about all these things. But if we don't fundamentally address the real issue, which is our country, our judicial system, our legislative policies, our executive mandates, are all centered around protecting capital. If we don't address that and change it so that it's centered around people, living, life, the ability to do those things, then we are not going to last as a country. We are not going to last as a people or a society, as we can see, as 60% of all workers are living in poverty, as 70% of the country feels that they are in a financial crisis, as homelessness is on the rise to a pandemic level, to where the cost of living is inaccessible for most earners across every income branch. This is not a sustainable process. This is not how things get better. This isn't, ooh, tighten up your belts now because down the road there's going to be prosperity. This is the precursor, the foreshadowing of collapse. And the signs from our criminal justice system, especially eviction court, is the clue as to how bad this is becoming when corporations are being represented and not even individual landlords, which themselves are bad enough. So
the following months, homeless, showering at rest stops, sleeping in his truck. And what he specifically talks about is his company, referred to as American Landmark, a major corporate landlord with some 34,000 units concentrated in 111 mega complexes like Conrad across 8 southern states, North Carolina, Florida, and Texas, nearly 2/3 of properties purchased after the COVID pandemic began. And the company, with private equity structure that allows investors from all over the world to bet on the growth of a real estate portfolio, it is now America's 34th largest landlord. They say,
and it's not even one of the large. See, that's the worst part. They have property all across the South. They have international investments, and it's only the 34th largest landlord in the country, which means there are bigger landlords in the country, which may even be American owned, doing the same exact thing across an even greater swath of humanity. This is, I mean, privatizing home ownership and living, I mean, a roof, right? Privatizing healthcare, privatizing education, privatizing utilities, and then, of course, creating food products for a for-profit model. I guess it's always been considered privatized. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that farmers, even back when we were an agrarian society, weren't themselves profiting. I don't think it was for the public good. So food has probably never been public, but education has, utilities have, healthcare used to be, housing to a greater or lesser degree. If you owned the land, you owned the housing, and that was about all there was to it, right? But there's always been landlords. We have never had a society in which we met the needs, the basic needs of life for all Americans, all citizens, all people, right? And because of that, there is so much unnecessary struggle, so much unnecessary suffering, so much unnecessary stress and death and violence and cruelty, just so a few can maintain the vestiges of power and control because they have the means. And then why are we even allowing these few people to have these reigns in the first place? Again, there's a reason why it's called the 99% versus the 1%. We are outnumbering them 100-1. Why are we playing along? I don't understand. And it's, I mean, we can sit here and argue about it, but let's actually hear the story, because so far I'm just getting riled up from the introduction.
Based on a review by The Nation and type investigations of thousands of records from dozens of properties, as well as an interview with its CEO, it's clear that the company model inevitably leads to frequent displacements of tenants. And specifically, what they also do is they look at some 43 different tenants who faced eviction notices from across the American South and the Sun Belt. They report a wide array of issues that they say led to their case. And specifically, to get to the Israel connection, what they say is that because American Landmark is owned entirely almost by Elko, one of Israel's largest corporations. For years, Elko, via its electric super brand, has done extensive business, quote, in Israeli settlements in West Bank and East Jerusalem.
So this seems to be the Israeli corporation that is allowing Israel, Zionism, to do the colonizing, the literal colonizing, in literally the West Bank, Gaza, and apparently in the United States of America. Outstanding.
And they drive many thousands of Palestinians, obviously, from there. Elko has maintained deep ties to the Israeli military and, of course, has been a long part of like the Israeli establishment. You can say all of that objectively, this is an objective fact, that you have a landlord here, which is operating in the U.S. And one of the reasons I think that this is worth highlighting is the problem of corporatized landlordization in the first place. No one is saying Israel controls everything. I want to be very clear about that.
Okay, but you know what? Although I also am not going to say that Israel controls everything, it is very clear Israel does control a not insignificant number of elected officials and a not insignificant number of Western countries to create a geopolitical circumstance, if you will, or stage for Israel to operate in with damn near impunity. Again, if Israel can openly colonize the West Bank and openly cause genocide in the Gaza Strip, while the world looks on and condemns it, but none of the Western superpowers or powers that be do anything about it, I would say that even if Israel doesn't control those governments, they definitely hold sway over them. And that's also not anti-Semitic. That's also not conspiracy theory. That is objective, observable fact from a historical lens of having literally witnessed it for the past 2 years.
It's the 34th largest landlord. But it's emblematic to me, and I thought of this nation story, in the same way that we can worry about Chinese purchases of large swaths of farmland, or any foreigners, by the way. Anybody ever go down to Miami? Do you know what % of Miami is owned by people with foreign addresses? It's crazy. New York City, San Diego, Los Angeles, Chicago, here in DC. Foreign ownership of land is a huge problem. And especially when it turns into a financialized instrument like...
I was going to say, I don't think foreign ownership of land matters, because at the end of the day, a country can always reclaim any asset from any person that made any purchase anywhere in America. It's when you try to treat that land as sovereign land, that's when it becomes a problem. But none of these properties that are owned by foreign nationals change their national origin to sovereign land of Saudi Arabia or France or Germany or Russia even. So that's a bit sensational in my opinion, but I digress.
These big mega towers across the Sun Belt. One of the promises of the Sun Belt is it's cheaper to live there. That's why a lot of people move down there. Well, what's happening is they're all getting rolled up into these giant, equity investments for private equity that's yielding money now to who knows who, from Israeli companies to Chinese companies, Russian companies, sketchy Brazilian companies, money laundering from all across the world. And the people paying the price are us, who have to pay a couple $1,000s a month in rent, and who are having gadgets and all these other things put in there. So I thought it was just a good piece to demonstrate how, when you have this financialization plus internationalization of America's housing market, this is the end result, ultimately.
And the other connection here, I mean, the fact that this company is so deeply involved in what are illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem, think of what they're doing there. They're actively pushing Palestinians off of their land. And then think of what they're doing here, which is what the nation documents, is they're using all these additional fees and tricks to push Americans now out of their homes, and at 9 times the rate of your average landlord. And, this is what a lot of big management companies want to do. They like to push people out of their houses. Why? Because in a lot of places, you have restrictions on how much you can hike the rent, so long as someone is occupying that apartment. When they leave, you can jack up the rent much further. We've actually seen this with some of these ICE raids, like the apartment building in Chicago.
Which I think that's actually on today's stream. And if it isn't on today's stream, we can certainly cover it on Thursday, but... we covered this, that some of these ICE detentions are actually being driven by landlords of tenant buildings to drive the tenants out of the said building so that they can jack up the prices of rent. Again, we have corporations, whether they're landlords, whether they're businesses, trying to shuffle people around so that they can extract more profit from their asset or from their business, by either hiring people for cheaper, just downsizing generally, or turning an apartment building into a luxury apartments and just doubling the rent so that they can make more money. Like, the Nazis didn't profit off of being Nazis. They were doing that for the love of the game. America is also doing it for the love of the game, but they're like, you know what? We love the game so much, we should be making money while we're doing it too. That makes us so much more worse. And the fact that that isn't being punished or discussed broadly, that there are entities in the United States that are weaponizing ICE for their own personal profit, on top of the profiteering happening from ICE broadly, we have elements, business leaders, landlords, financial firms, management companies, weaponizing ICE against people just so that they can profit from that horror inflicted. Like, this is these are the reasons why I am running for Congress, to put an end to this, to put at least a voice to it if I can't put an end to it, because I'll vote against it every single day of the week. But clearly, what we lack in this country is an awareness that our institutions, our businesses, our economy is truly spiraling down a drain that we will not be able to recover from in any sense of the word quickly. We will recover maybe over the course of a generation or two. Eventually, we will recover. But how much suffering has to happen for profiteering off of ICE, terrorism of local communities, of literal apartment complexes, of workers, the most vulnerable workers? Because it's not like the immigration places that are getting raided, right, where the immigrants tend to work, are these high-paying places. We're not, well, I guess I digress. That's not true. We did raid the Hyundai plant, and those were all high-paid engineers. So you know what? We're going after everybody, so that what? Atlanta didn't have to, or was it North Carolina, South Carolina, didn't have to pay for the Hyundai engineers. They got the building built, and then they got rid of all the immigrants, and now they have a free building with machinery to build cars with, because they can do eminent domain or whatever else. Like, the cruelty, the corruption, and the actual human cost involved in weaponizing ICE, which is why it's being expanded and so well funded, is going to be studied for generations to come. Assuming, this administration doesn't plunge us into World War III first. But again, I digress.
There's some indications that what happened there is you had a sleazy slumlord from out of state, not out of country, but from out of state, who wanted to kick a bunch of tenants out of the building to make it easier on them so they could, reset the rates. And so what they did was effectively call in ICE to clear everybody out of that building. And that appears to be part of what it looks like. That may have been the story too, with that whole Trender Aragua apartment building in Colorado as well. So there are lots of tricks that landlords use to try.
And again, this isn't a trick like, hey, I dodged the IRS, or I saved taxes by doing this, or I undermined the auditor's office or something. No, this is domestic terrorism. I am going to use the state as a weapon to forcibly remove you, the tenant, the person contractually tied to my asset. I am going to use the state to tear you from that asset, terrorize you in the process, pulling you out in the middle of the night, naked and afraid, on the street, handcuff you and your children, so that you have an excuse to break your lease, so that I, as the person who weaponized it and caused all this to come into motion, can profit. That should be domestic terrorism charges. In any sort of sane, functioning society, which I don't know that there are any in the world, never mind America, that would be domestic terrorism charges. At best, it would be domestic terrorism charges. At worst, it would still be corruption. It would be some sort of trying to manipulate a system to not have to pay as much or make money. Like, it would still have to be some form of corruption, a blanket term, right? But that is domestic terrorism. It is 100% the definition of domestic terrorism, which is acts of violence or fear against a specific population for a specific political, social, cultural, or economic gain. And we have that right here. The FBI thingamabob. Right here. Violent criminal acts committed by individuals and or groups to further ideological goals stemming from domestic influence such as those of a politic, religious, social, racial, or environmental nature. So, again, asset forfeiture, well, that's what the FBI does. But, like, these are and do not tell me that sending armed police or federal agents to forcibly remove people from a building and then zip tying their hands in the cold street at night without clothes isn't an act of violence. Committed by individuals or groups, hence a group, perpetrated by an individual, to further ideological goals. And quite frankly, well, capitalism isn't an ideological goal, but greed is. Greed 100% is ideological. I need more. I deserve more. It is mine to get. Stemming from domestic influences such as those of political, religious, social, racial, or environmental. And if we want to do that, tie that in, capitalism is political. If you have capital, you have political influence. And everybody in that building was black or brown, so there you have social and racial. Social because demographics, racial because also demographics, and social twice because of the poverty that, or the income status, needing to rent versus being able to own. And then that can also tie into political. Therein, I don't like immigrants, I don't like brown people, I'm going to use my racism as a political platform, which is apparently legitimate in America. So no, domestic terrorism is not a stretch. A college kid going for his Juris Doctor and to become a whatever defense attorney or whatever attorney that would be dealing with this could make the same argument way better than I could because they're actually going to school for it. This is not a stretch. That what these landlords are doing, whether it's the individual, whether it's the companies, whether it's the other industries calling ICE on their employees so they don't have to pay them, that is all domestic terrorism. So,
to kick people out of their apartments so that they can hike up the rent even further than they would otherwise be allowed to do. And what this documents is this Israeli company is apparently like they have really innovated in terms of the tactics that they use, the predatory and exploitative tactics that they use to make it so people cannot stay, cannot possibly afford the fees and the add-on additions in order to stay in their apartment. And so they end up out on the street. I mean, this is why when we talk about the, first of all, I think it's immoral to work with a company that is, participating in the illegal settlements in the West Bank. That's number one. But number two, when we talk about the housing market and we think about like the abundance style solutions where you're just, trying to relieve permitting issues and build out more, it's like, yes, that is part of the problem. But if you're not confronting these issues with, entrenched capital interests, then you're only...
This is what I love. Honestly, and I gotta toot my own horn. I'm gonna be a little cocky when I say all this, and so we're gonna do the big screen here. We're gonna do the eyes on me. Haha. I talk a lot, and I probably gain or lose viewers as I'm talking because they're like, wah, 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 wah. But if you stick around and listen to me, wah, 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 and then we inevitably play the video to some later point in that video. And that person, that subject matter expert, whether that's a journalist, whether that's a physicist, whether that's a politician, hell, we've even done it where it was heads of state. Whatever I had just want about, they literally would say verbatim or damn near close to it. I know what I'm talking about. I am not just some talking head on the internet. I'm not just some guy with aspirations of grandeur with nothing to back it up. I have a whole lot to back it up with. So I implore you, if you see this channel or if you see a video or a clip of this channel, please give it the consideration that it deserves. Help me, help us, help you work together to build a platform because it does take regular people. It does take this camaraderie, this working together. And to be able to see that I don't have to wear this fancy suit with my vest and all that, although I will start doing that if it helps improve the appearance, I guess. I will, but we shouldn't have to play games. We shouldn't have to dress up and be a caricature of leadership to have leadership qualities. And I'm not saying I'm unique in the ability to talk about it. What I'm saying is it is so simple to digest the truth of a matter that with a little bit of insight and perhaps intuition and sure, find some background knowledge, you too can draw the same conclusions. And that's the point. We need more critical thinking, not just to challenge ideas and ideology for the sake of doing so, but to truly understand the things that are happening. Yes, she is talking about things that I agree with regardless. We are a sympathetic audience with Breaking Point's channel, right? That's notwithstanding. Many would argue that this is just an echo chamber at that point. But being able to discuss these issues from the facts that are presented and being able to digest it and understand the true ramifications from not just what's being discussed, but to extrapolate from that information what the actual results are, that's not a bias. That is that next step. That is that critical thinking. If I present to you A, you need to be able to understand B, C, D through Z, right? Or as far along that alphabet list as you possibly can. So I want you all to understand, and I want you all to see that. And I want you to recognize that you can do that too. And that's why I wear just a regular sweater on these streams while sitting in the Oval Office, because this should be an everyman's dream. This should be an everyman's opportunity. This should not be limited to generals and governors and business leaders and lawyers, right? Elected office, and especially not the Oval Office, should not be this thing that people cannot achieve. Yeah, you can't just be some guy, right? You can't just be some gal. You got to have a little bit of three brain cells to rub together. Sure, fine. That would be ideal, of course. But we always sell ourselves short. Well, I mean, I'm not rich. I'm not a lawyer. I can't talk about these things. Who am I, right? Well, if I can do it, and I work, in fact, my shift is now ending 30 minutes before stream starts. Okay, that's why I'm eating dinner on stream now at the beginning. It's because I don't have time, because I have a job. Because if I don't have a job, I can't afford to live and eat and do these streams. Because of the obvious reasons, right? So if I'm a working class American who can understand what is happening in the world or here at home, and understand maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 steps out from it, or even only 1, 2, or 3, depending on what the subject matter is, then you can too. Politics is not limited to the elite or the wealthy or the powerful or those that control capital. At least it doesn't have to be. So I really, truly encourage you. I truly and challenge you to step up in your own mind, in your own view, right? Take ownership of, you know what? I do have an opinion and I do have insight on this. Not all opinions are equal, right? But insight is, critical thinking, analysis is, if you can back up your opinion with some sort of logical reasoning that isn't trust me bro or circular logic, this works because this works because this works, which this makes that work, right? If you can see a subject and be like, well, if this is the case, then this has to also be true, and then challenge it, and then it remains true. That is the essence of critical thinking. That's it. That's it, right? This is a black napkin. You don't need an opinion on that, right? Like, this is not a debatable thing, except people will. It's like, no, this is a crumpled black napkin. It is an off black napkin. It's onyx. It's raven. It's whatever else. It's not true black. Cool. Where's your source? You would then, I don't know, snip the image of the napkin, put it in a like an Inkscape type deal, and then do the little clicker. And then you'd get like a hex code for it, and it'd be like, oh, it's this color black. Put that into Google, and then you find out what the hex code is, and it's like, that's what this is, right? Analysis, critical thinking, challenging. These are the things we need to do, but we need to do it in a way that's constructive. And we need to believe that we can do it in a way that's constructive. And we need to do it in a way that we believe that while doing it, We are actually seeking information to make ourselves better and our understanding of the world around us better. That's all I'm trying to say with this. And the fact that I know it sounds like and looks like that I'm just some schmuck content creator or streamer like everybody else on here. But in terms of politics, I am at the very least one of these trustworthy individuals, just like the big multi-million-dollar subscriber channels. I know what I'm talking about, and I want you to share that. It is not a special skill or ability that I possess. It's not a unique opportunity. I took the time to learn the policies and politics that we deal with, but I also have the ability to address an issue that is presented to me. Critical thinking. That's all it is. If you can analyze and if you can digest, you too can be doing this. And we need more of you doing this or running for office specifically. Right? So, enough of that. Enough Professor Ronan lecture time. And I guess patting myself on the back. Let's wrap this video up, though.
Dealing with one sliver of what the issue is here. You have to tackle all of these problems, and this is certainly one of them. The other one, that we've talked about before is like the algorithmic price fixing in the rent.
Yeah, I know we talked about this. The biggest, worst perpetrator was in Atlanta, where the Zillow, I believe it was Zillow, was being used by major landlord groups to literally fix the price of rent for all of Atlanta. Like some 1 million properties or something obnoxious, obscene like that. And then they finally got caught, and I don't know if there were any consequences, but or I don't remember if there were any consequences, but they got caught, and it blew up across the country, and it was a whole thing. So if this algorithmic price fixing, these major corporations taking small guys to the courts to kick them out of homes and properties so that they can jack up prices, if they can arbitrarily make improvements to the property just to justify jacking up rents by $400, like all these things, this is what needs to be controlled. This is what needs to be stopped. We can talk and say that Zohran Mamdani is a communist or a socialist all day long, but at the end of the day, he is addressing a very clear and present issue. That is the cost of living. And you do that by regulating the cost of living. And you do that by holding the bad actors accountable for being bad actors. So, I think we've hit this video home pretty hard. Plus, I went on my little soapbox there. So, let's keep it going with the corporations being scumbags with Walgreens.
On the Money Watch, workers at Walgreens won't be getting paid vacation time for the holidays.
Yeah, the pharmacy changes eliminated 6 paid holidays for hourly store workers. Apparently, it's a cost-cutting move. Private equity firm Sycamore Partners bought Walgreens in August, and Crane Chicago Business said the new owners told workers about the change last month. Walgreens has already fired 80 corporate employees and announced plans to close its downtown office.
So that was a short clip, I guess. I don't know what to call it, but corporations are now moving past the last vestiges of the labor movement in America. And yes, I am talking about the labor movement in America, which seems like that can't possibly be true, right? We had unions in the 1950s and 60s. That started to wane in the 70s and 80s. And then globalization started taking over in the 90s and the early thousands. But for the most part, workers were improving the general conditions of work, right? We were getting benefits. We had benefits. We were getting wages, bonuses, this, that, and the other. And since around the 2010s, that has been slipping and waning. And now it is in a free fall. And what we are seeing is that corporations are now using the excuse, well, we got bought out. We're no longer in control over our own business. It's big bad fintech that is in charge of everything now. And big bad fintech wants a return on their investment snappy. So they're going to lay off people and just start gobbling up all the assets of companies. It's what we've seen happen to GameStop, Sears, Toys R Us, you name it. Like all of the major companies that have been staples in American industry are falling to the wayside because of this kind of predatory financial acquisitions. Now, not only is the acquisitions happening and all of these assets being sold off and the leasing and the land and all this other stuff, now it's starting to target the workers themselves. And we saw it with Target and we saw it with Starbucks. We're seeing it with Amazon as well. You have the union busting, you have the slave wages, the indentured servitude, right? But you also see it with the treatment of the workers themselves. Target is now forcing employees to smile at people in the most creepy way possible. And Walgreens is now getting rid of federally paid holidays, which aren't mandated. There is no law in the United States of America that states you must have those days off. I think it's barely stated that it has to be paid at all. So we are proving or seeing in real time the proof that worker and labor relations and rights and powers and privileges are all but gone. And Walgreens and Target are the first shots fired in the corporate versus labor war to end the final battle, right? The final battle of the corporate labor war. And what's worse is they are winning. They're not winning because they have capital. They're not winning because they own the means of production. They're winning because we are not fighting back. We are not pushing back. Again, when Target was already struggling with sales, it was because they made a racist decision to publicly cancel DEI hiring practices, which is to protect discrimination in the hiring process. Protect against discrimination in the hiring process. That's why they were boycotted. And forcing workers to do things that is unnatural or very weird without any incentive or pay or any of that, or just anything that makes sense, is one way in which corporations are reasserting their control over workers. The second thing that exacerbated this was COVID and the need for remote work and the establishment of remote work. Well, what did that do? It proved that all of these office buildings were unnecessary because most of the work could be done from home. But that gave people the most dangerous resource of all. Not money, time. Time to think, time to do, time to relax, time to not be stressed, and time to see the world around them, right? So corporations demanded that we come back to work, and largely that has been the case. Now corporations are determining how we act on and off the clock because we constantly represent them. And now they're also going to get rid of what minimal benefits and incentives there exist in the workplace at all other than the paycheck. And then they're going to start crushing wages until we are indentured servants across every single industry in America. Now, that is their game plan. That is evident in the actions that they are taking. That is very clear. It is clear as day, right? As clear as this is a pipe, right? The only way to combat this is by not allowing it to progress. Every single hourly worker in Walgreens should immediately quit their jobs and immediately apply to anywhere else. Anywhere else. Just not Walgreens. That is a form of strike. That is a form of resistance that we as workers and laborers can do that cost us nothing. Maybe a little bit of inconvenience, right? If you're working at Walgreens, you're probably not making a large sum of money. So maybe don't quit, but certainly start looking for a different job. And the sooner and faster we can do that, Walgreens will have no choice but to rescind that decision because they won't have workers to do anything with. And that's the point. All it takes is one act, one unified act to showcase who in this country actually controls what, who has the power, who actually has the authority. And when it comes down to the brass tacks, it is always the people. But the means of production is owned by capital, right? So if we have the power and if we have the authority, why don't we control it? And that's the question that every worker needs to ask themselves and talk about amongst themselves. We have to push back. Sooner the better, but at any point in time, it'll still be successful because of that whole 99% versus 1. So, we made it an hour. My throat's only mildly dying on me, probably because I've been doing more than my usual amount of talking on stream. So, for those of you just joining us, this is Samuel Ronan stream. Yeah, I guess that is our server, right? We are now Samuel. We do politics primarily, politics, policy, and news. Tuesdays are domestic affairs, domestic policy, domestic news events, and we have still quite a lot ahead of us, so I'll try getting through these next videos. Actually, a lot of them seem to be pretty short and sweet, so we're gonna not blitz through them, but stay tuned. We have a lot to cover. You won't regret it.
Overnight, a major reversal from President Trump.
I don't care about it, released or not. What I think you should do, if you're going to do it, then you have to go into Epstein's friends. This Reid Hoffman spent a lot of time on the island. I was never on his island. Bill Clinton is the one there's...
What? What? Does he realize that every time he speaks, that is, like, evidence? Especially if it's being recorded? Like, does he not realize he is perjuring himself? He has said he's been on the island. The email says he's been on the island. People have placed him on the island, but he never did anything. And Clinton, according to Epstein's brother, literally didn't go to the island or literally didn't do anything with the girls. So, like, what? Okay. Hi, Ruben. And it did snow the one day, but other than that, it's been fairly warm. But that's also not great because it shouldn't be warm in November. But suffice to say, the delusion of this man, but also the hubris. I think somebody told him in his staff that if you want to get ahead of this thing, just demand the release of everything and then just pass the blame onto everybody else around you. I also kind of wonder if this is the fall of Donald Trump and the rise of J.D. Vance to try and normalize the fascism that's been occurred. If this is as far as the fascism that's been consolidated and now they're just going to shore it all up together. I kind of wonder if Trump's turning into the fall guy at this point and J.D. Vance is being prepped to take that position. I am genuinely curious because if I were going to get into state crafting, right? If I was a power broker and I wanted to create a fascist state, I probably would use some type of clown like Trump to do it, right? To rile up the base, be the charismatic face, and then once that person's in office, just get them to, with all of their cahoots and all of their cohorts, to undermine all of those institutions, play games, do the chaos, right? And then when enough chaos and many fires have been lit, then start winding it back and getting rid of the clown, raising a different puppet who's less inflammatory, and then shoring up all the damage that has been caused and solidifying the power that has been consolidated. That is the exact way I would do it. And it's not me saying it just out of pocket. That's how it's been done throughout all of history. By people that want to undermine existing regimes, kings, empires, whatever else. You cause chaos for the person in power. You put your own person up there, but you don't want them to have the power. You want them to be a puppet. And so either you continue to play the strings from behind the scenes, or you get them removed and then you assume the power yourself. So, Peter Thiel wants JD. He is the reason why JD is... Okay, well, there you have it then. This might be Peter Thiel's rise to authoritarian supremacy.
supposedly 28 times.
Trump last night making his new position clear. House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide, and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax. It comes ahead of tomorrow's expected vote in the House on a bill that could force the release of all of the Justice Department's files on Epstein. The lead Republican co-sponsor of the bill says more than 100 Republicans may support it.
And you will have voted to protect pedophiles if you don't vote to release these files. The record of this vote will last longer than Donald Trump's presidency.
Trump this weekend attacking his former ally, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, calling her a lunatic and a traitor after she supported releasing the files.
I believe the country deserves transparency in these files, and
it is kind of scary how similar all of these conservative blonde women look. And I'm not saying that as like all white women look the same, but it's the hairstyles, it's the face, like the makeup that they do. It's actually really unsettling how similar all of these conservative white women make themselves appear. It's very unsettling.
And I don't believe that rich, powerful people should be protected if they have done anything wrong.
Greene saying since Trump's attacks, she's received multiple threats, saying this puts blood in the water and creates a feeding frenzy, and it could ultimately lead to a harmful or even deadly outcome.
I don't think her life is in danger. Frankly, I don't think anybody cares about her.
Trump says he cut ties with Epstein after a decade-long friendship because Epstein and his accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell were luring away women and girls who worked at Mar-a-Lago. Trump claims at the time of Epstein's arrest in 2019, he hadn't spoken with the notorious sex offender in 15 years. But the House Oversight Committee has released documents subpoenaed from Epstein's estate, many of which mention Trump by name, sparking new questions about his relationship with Epstein.
I suffered so much pain.
As pressure mounts, this new video shows 8 Epstein survivors advocating for the release of the files.
I was 14 years old.
I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17. 14 years old.
The women holding photos of their younger selves, reciting their ages when they met Epstein.
It's time to bring the secrets out of the shadows.
The video ending with this message: 5 administrations and we're still in the dark. Even if the House passes the bill to release the files, it still needs to pass the Senate, where its fate has been unclear. It would then head to President Trump's desk for his signature.
Which is really insane when you think about it. A lot of not all of the senators have been in there for 20 years, right? But this Epstein scandal only ended at around 2019, 2020, right? When the man himself died. But Ghislaine has still been up and running until what, a year ago? When was the Ghislaine? When was Ghislaine arrested and charged? Oh, it was 2020? It just honestly didn't feel like that. Okay. Well, my bad. It honestly felt like that was much more recent. But anyway, neither here nor there. She was in operations, and the fact that from prison she is still meeting with her, who knows, probably discussing God knows what, it's not like it's actually come to an end, right? So they were power brokers. They were weapons dealers. They were literally coordinating treaties and ceasefires with warring factions, whether those were countries or terrorist groups or both. So the fact that there are people in office right now in the House and the Senate that probably had close personal ties with Epstein or Ghislaine or both, and actually worked with them or were blackmailed by them. And then Trump himself, who is mentioned in an overwhelming number of the emails, of which he has no recollection of. The fact that it's going to the Senate to maybe make it to his desk when he himself is the largest culprit and criminal element in this whole thing is insane. Are they going to incriminate themselves? They might not have a choice. due to public pressure. But the fact that that's what it's come down to is absolutely batshit. Trump instructed the DOJ to investigate the people in the lists and the files. That will be the excuse not to release any files that are damning to Trump. If they are part of the investigation, they can't be released. Except all of the emails from the Epstein estate are getting released, so it doesn't even matter if it's part of the investigation or not. Although, to your point, it might not include pictures and video, which, granted, I don't think we should be exposing the pictures and the video on the internet because of exactly what they are. But sure, making it known that these are photos and videos and images of Trump with minors doing things, yes, that fact, that knowledge should be made public, but yeah, maybe not the imagery itself. But to your point, yes, he might try and find a way to pass it or sign it off and then try and find a way to finagle what can be released due to it being part of investigations. Which goes back to the whole corruption thing. You're going to put the criminal in charge of determining what evidence can be used against him. That's wild. And then to the point of how influential Epstein was, he was in 2019, where Michael Cohen testified, Jeffrey Epstein was texting with Delaware Congresswoman. No. Dell? What the hell does Dell mean? I don't know. Stacey Paskett from the Virgin Islands. Like, the man was texting a congresswoman during a hearing. And you mean to tell me that he doesn't have some sort of hold on people that are currently sitting in office? That's not possible. Is that the whole video? Okay. The Post reviewed multiple video feeds from the hearing and matched the text, which were set in Pacific time, with the video. Is this the whole? Is this what?
This was when Barack Obama was president of the United States. And while we were once driving through a struggling neighborhood in Chicago, he commented that
okay,
only
hold on, we gotta drop the
could
CC
live
because
that
it's
way.
blocking the text.
Attorney-client privilege, yes, I will turn it over.
You, as my friend Mr. Meadows pointed out, misled this committee even today in a written submission that contradicted your testimony. You have suggested you are going to review that. Did you review? Are you going to review it in our next break to correct the record, yes or no?
Yes.
Question, you helped out the president's campaign or were involved in the campaign as a representative, as a spokesman, even in your words today. It was your idea for the campaign dating back to 2011. Is that accurate, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Weisenberg and other individuals, Ms. Rona. Who are those individuals? Are they with the Trump organization?
They
and
are.
Are there other people that we should be meeting with?
So Alan Weisselberg is the chief financial officer.
Uh-huh.
The
You got to
Trump
quickly give us
organization.
as many names as you can so we can get to them.
Yes, ma'am.
As Ms. Rona, what is Ms. Rona's position?
Rona Graff is Mr. Trump's executive assistant.
And would she be able to corroborate many of the statements that you've made here?
Yes, her office is directly next to his, and she's involved in a lot that went on.
Epstein's accusers have released.
That's crazy. And the Congresswoman's office admitted that they were legitimate. Like, Epstein, even if he wasn't a sex trafficking scumbag, he was deliberately involved in national affairs in the middle of a testimony, a literal testimony involving an investigation on one of his biggest marks, like Donald Trump, right? So he was coaching the Congresswoman, grilling Michael Cohen, who was investigating Trump, to find out more information about what's happening with Trump. So, like, Epstein had all this dirt on Trump, had all this evidence on Trump on account of probably creating it and creating the situations for it to be in existence, while working with intelligence communities and literally coaching congresspeople in the middle of a congressional hearing. Like, this is a scandal. The sex trafficking is a scandal. That is a scandal. This man being this influential, having these ties to Israel and the CIA and other intelligence communities, the fact that he was central in a lot of these different controversies needs to be discussed, needs to be brought to light, and accountability needs to be given. It needs to be doled out accordingly, because the ramifications are either A, he was manipulating a lot of geopolitical conflicts behind the scenes. The U.S. government, CIA, and actual elected officials were complicit with it, and it was an international conspiracy on top of it. Like, this should be just 24/7 news, but it isn't. Guess I can't handle being... I gotta work on talking from the diaphragm, apparently. Epstein was also a friend of Castro and Chomsky. Well, the thing is, there would have been, according to all of these revelations about who Epstein was and the kind of influence that he had, there could have been many legitimate reasons to be friends with Epstein in political circles, in intelligence circles, in business circles, because he brokered it all. It's a question of when was he putting on his broker hat and when was he putting on his blackmail hat, right? And that's still plenty of reason to reveal all the names in the files and hold the people accountable that were part of the blackmail hat. And if the espionage and the politics and the business part was legitimate, okay. Still fucking disturbing that he just did sex trafficking on the side then, as a hobby. This is why the old guard Dems are scared, no more looking the other way. If they do stupid shit like this, they are going to hear about it, not from the other side, but from the people who voted for them. This is part of the house cleaning process by the new left, which... I don't know that it is from the new left, because I think it's mostly messaging about a situation that finally got the voice and platform that it deserved. It just took how many years? Dozens of years for it to get to this point, with all the advocacy, with all the legalese and all the support and the final convictions that finally occurred, right? That is what allowed this momentum to finally build over the past 5 years. But I wouldn't say that this is a victory of the left because, again, even conservatives are jumping on this bandwagon. I think it's finally a victory of the messaging of the lawyers, legal team, and the media that was involved in these stories finally being able to gain traction. But I wouldn't say that it is left-leaning motivated, but definitely welcome.
Released a new video calling for the release of all the...
Okay, no, we saw that video. All right, so these next couple of videos are pretty short and sweet, but I guess they all kind of are still about Epstein. So hold on. I mean, at this point, it's just it is now in the hands of the very people who were going to be on the list anyway, and whether or not they follow through, and what if any fallout is going to occur. So hopefully we start seeing a whole lot of justice being doled out, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Justice should, in fact, know no limits. No one should be above the law. I 1,000% agree with you. 1,000% agree with you. It's just a question of if this corrupt judicial system is going to do that, considering this same Supreme Court that was trying to say, oh, well, that's unconstitutional with gerrymandering, were the same Supreme Court that gave Trump basically imperial power. So we'll see. I guess we will see. But this
Today,
is
the House.
So this seems to be an analysis on the Epstein base, and it's our favorite lady
Will finally.
and
vote.
our favorite guy, our favorite pollsters, talking about the numbers. And I swear to God, this clown's going to say something about the late 1900s again.
To force the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files from the Justice Department, President Trump now says that he will sign that bill if it reaches his desk. It is quite a 180 and reversal from the stance that he had just a few days ago and held for many, many months. Republican leaders were bracing last week for many Republican members to vote in support of the files. And now, with Trump's blessing, it's expected to receive even more Republican Republican support. What are the numbers behind this? CNN's Harry Anton is running the numbers for you on this. Why were Republicans willing, from the numbers that you see, on this one to go against what Donald Trump wanted?
You know, usually Donald Trump has his pulse on the Republican base, but he did not on this issue, because what are we talking about, Kate Baldwin?
Well, I was going to say, too, when this first broke, I mean, yes, the Epstein and Ghislaine, they got arrested and then they made the news after the fact. But when the Epstein and Trump connection broke, that was in July, wasn't it? It was right on the tail of the big beautiful bill vote. And they have been battling this fallout since. So I would say, what was it, June or July? I want to say it was July, but maybe it was June. Either which way, for at least 4 months, the administration has been battling and pushing back against this with a 2-month recess, a government shutdown, deny, starting conflict in the Caribbean. I mean, you name it. This administration has done everything under the sun to try and get past this story, and it's still held on. To where now they have to do damage control and try and get ahead of this thing. So it's very impressive. It's very impressive to see that if nothing else gets this administration, this might finally do it. Let's see. The courts just stopped Texas's redistricting using the same argument Trump is using against California. Nice. Let's throw that on this. Well, maybe not this stream because we're halfway through it now. Why don't we do that video for Thursday, though? That would be outstanding. And talk about a middle finger to the administration.
Well, GOP on the Epstein files. Approve of Trump. We're used to seeing approval of Trump among Republicans being 85, 90%. But when it came to the Epstein files, look at this. Just 44%, south of 50% of Republicans actually approved on Donald Trump when it came to the Epstein files. Compare that to this. What was the percentage of Republicans that wanted all of the Epstein files released? 67%. So what we were dealing with is simple mathematics. The Republican base was against Donald Trump on the Epstein files. They were with the idea of releasing them. The Republican representatives saw that and therefore were not afraid to go against Donald Trump, because this was the rare instance in which the Republican base was not with Donald Trump. They were actually with the idea of being against Donald Trump and releasing the Epstein files.
So, it is politically expedient to be against Trump and to have the Epstein files released. Yes, there's still an extremely high approval, given it's still extremely high. It's not zero, right? And 44% of Republicans is still tens of millions of Americans. So that's still a lot. That said, will this be the nail in the coffin that finally ends this administration? I don't know. I hope so. I would have preferred it being the Nazi salute from Elon Musk within hours of his inauguration. But hey, if this is what finally does it, great. And even if J.D. Vance takes the helm after Trump's fall from grace, I still think that is something that can be worked with, because J.D. Vance will not have the same pull, the same political influence that Trump did. He doesn't have it. And it's going to cause a whole lot of infighting because of the power vacuum that Trump's fall will create, which will then stymie the fascism and the consolidation, and we'll just be left with wherever we were at for the remaining term, which will give us, you, me, and anybody else that wants to run or help people running, get a chance to get into office and start undoing some of this harm, or prepping themselves to be in a position to undo the harm in 2028 if they can't get in 2026. So that's my take, is that the only reason why these things are happening as rapidly as they are is because of political expediency. Of course, you would think that would encourage the Democrats to grow a spine and actually fulfill their obligations, but we know what that's all about. JD has the most punchable face. I mean, you're not wrong. It only took 10 months for the Republicans to turn on Trump. Well, and they didn't even turn on him until July. And that only took 4 months. So, like I said, I'll take the wins where I can find them. Speaking of predators.
Welcome back to ABC News Live reports. Sean Diddy Combs is facing new sexual assault allegations. The LA Sheriff's Department says that it's investigating a report from an alleged victim in Florida. That alleged victim has identified himself as music producer Jonathan Hay in social media posts that have since been removed. A spokesperson for Combs has not responded to ABC News' request for comment. Combs is currently serving a federal prison sentence after he was convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution earlier this year. Let's bring in ABC News legal contributor and trial attorney Brian Buckmeyer for more on this. So, Brian, this accuser says he's already listed as John Doe in a civil case against Combs. So talk about how that could impact this investigation now that he's also has identified himself, too.
Yeah, so the only impact that I can see on this investigation will now be that law enforcement will know who to speak with. But he already reached out to law enforcement in Florida that's been working in conjunction with LA where the alleged crime has occurred. And so the impact of him making notice that he also has a civil case doesn't really affect one or the other. If anything, it affects the potential civil case, because with a typical civil case, you just have lawyers doing the investigation. Now you have the full force and power of the LAPD doing part of the investigation, and their criminal investigation could help create more information that he could go forward in a civil case.
Well, that's not much of a bombshell news thing, and it kind of seems like it was a, quick 5 seconds of fame grab to try and expedite his own cases. But hey, you know what? Now's the time. Come forward. Sean Diddy is already in prison. He's going to be draining his wealth and resources quicker, and he's a pariah. So if you were a victim of Sean Combs, now is the time to go forth and bring it up, because I'm sure there are significantly more victims out there that have been bought or silenced in some way, form, or fashion over the years. Just like there are tens of hundreds of more Epstein victims and Ghislaine victims than the 8 women that did their CNN video. So, you know what? Pile that shit on. Pile it on as much as possible. And you know what? Do so against Trump as well. Do it against the congressmen. Do it against the senators. For the love of God, do it against SCOTUS. Do it against Pete Hegseth or RFK. Like, we need to bombard them with as much civil and lawsuit cases as they are spreading chaos in our society. Like, we can fight back. There are many different ways to do so. Okay. Now, these next few videos are going to be dealing with resignations and talking about the the ramifications of the shutdown and the upcoming holiday season. So, we'll start the resignation, but to warn you, if economics isn't your jam, come back in 5. Stay tuned, right? Keep it running. Keep our viewers going. But, take 5.
Breaking news for you. The acting head of FEMA, David Richardson, has resigned. Richardson led FEMA for about 6 months, but was never officially confirmed by the Senate. He faced a lot of criticism over the summer for not reacting fast enough to the flood disaster at Camp Mystic in Texas, which killed 27 campers back on July 4th. Justice Department reporter Luke Barr.
So you're telling me that you can be an acting director for 6 months and not be confirmed by the Senate? So then, if you can do the job without being officially confirmed, then what's the point of the confirmation? And if that's the case, why did the Senate rubber stamp Marco Rubio, RFK Jr., and Pete Hegseth? Why the ever-loving fuck is that McMahon woman in charge of the Department of Education? Are you serious? If the Senate could have just not approved the appointments, then why the fuck did they? But at the same time, if there's no consequences for not doing so, then what's the process about? Why even have the process? I mean, I know it's in the Constitution. I'm not arguing that. I'm saying, why are they able to do the job without a confirmation first? Shouldn't it go nomination, confirmation, then you get to do the job, instead of nomination. Like, and then again, why wouldn't you withhold your confirmation to prevent bad actors from entering in those positions? Again, I am mad at this administration, but this entire legislative body, the entirety of Congress, the House and the Senate, are complicit. And it's not even close. And this proves it.
It's me now. So what do we know, Luke?
Well,
yeah, what do we
just
know,
got a
Lou?
statement from the Department of Homeland Security confirming that Richardson did resign today. They don't describe the circumstances in which Richardson resigned. They do say that the Chief of Staff at FEMA, Karen Evans, will be the new acting FEMA administrator starting on December 1st. And Richardson did face some criticism from those both externally and internally at the department. Of course, he took over for Cameron Hamilton, the former acting FEMA administrator who was tapped by the Trump administration to dismantle the agency, as FEMA's Secretary Kristi Noem has said publicly that she wants to dismantle it. Hamilton kind of pushed back on that and was subsequently ousted from the role as acting administrator. They replaced her. They replaced him with Richardson, who had no prior experience in disaster management. Instead, he led the Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Office at the Department of Homeland Security. And both internally and externally, people have expressed concern that he might be the person for the job. Of course, now DHS says that he has resigned, and they did thank him for his service.
All right.
Oh, and they thanked him for his service. But, let's just keep putting sycophants into positions of power and authority to literally dismantle and undermine positions. But again, let's also be the Senate and confirm it with a big rubber stamp, except for this one guy. Makes no sense to me. Let's face it, the shutdown ended because the airlines raised hell. And it was probably about to cause a general strike amongst the aviation industry, which, again, we need to do that regardless of if we are given the crumbs that we were asking for, right? If we continue to allow this abuse and then, well, less abuse, because there's never not abuse when it comes to our industries, then we need to continue to keep the pressure going. Like, these unions collectively need to be organizing strikes across every industry. And the fact that that's not happening is mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. That's why it ended 24 hours before the major flight restrictions took effect, especially the ones affecting international flights. No, I'll give you that, Steve. I think so. I mean, you're not wrong. You know, it's only conspiracy theory if it doesn't make sense, right? No, I mean, that seems like logical, sound reasons right there. I don't think that's conspiracy or embellishment at all. No, 100% on board with you. So, and that brings us...
And the Congressional Budget Office says the government shutdown cost billions.
No,
the new CBO
really?
assessment is forecasting some growth for next year, but says the 43-day pause cost $11 billion. Now, federal workers are waiting to find out when they'll get...
No, it did not cost $11 billion. There is no way it only cost $11 billion. Okay. Google. What is the total federal budget spend? $6.73 trillion. With a T. For those of you that don't know what that looks like, that is 6-7. All of you Gen Alphas, you can laugh now. Trillion, right? So that's thousand. That's million. That's billion. And that is trillion. $6.7 trillion. That is 9 empty zeros, a 7, and a 6, right? So, like, well, technically it's 11 empty zeros. But you get my point. 43 days of 365 is over 10%. So 43 divided by 365 is 11.8%. Now, multiply that by the $6.7 trillion. That, technically, made a $789,315,068.49 impact, because that was the amount of budget, federal budget, that wasn't being utilized or spent because it was frozen. Oh, sure, the military and ICE might have been. So, well, I just closed the calculator, but it's still $600 billion worth of financial impact of funds not being dispersed, of not circulating in the way that they should. And so no, 11 billion, no. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars of impact, of budgeted, allocated impact that did not occur. It's like saying that if your business closes for a day, it only loses like 1 day's worth of profit. Right? That's not true. It lost the revenue, and it had to pay the workers, and it had to pay the bills, and it had to pay for all the other stuff that went along with running the business, on top of losing the money. Right? So if they're saying that there was $11 billion lost in revenue, okay. But the impact, the financial impact, way hundreds of billions of dollars. And you know what? Let's just
fully paid back for working during the shutdown. ABC's Alex Perchet is looking at all the numbers for us. Hi, Alex.
Hey, so in this week's Facts and Figures, we are talking about the end of that record government shutdown, the longest in U.S. history. In fact, this is how it compares to shutdowns of the past 43 days. That is more than double the length of the next longest government shutdown by a president not named Trump. And when you say, Alex, with the government now reopened.
I like how they... I mean, it's not funny because it's really fucking disturbing. Also, that government shutdown from Obama... That was the government shutdown where I was active duty Air Force, and when I finally got my political awakening that if I want to serve my country, it's not going to be in the military. So, the Obama shutdown is the reason why I am here today.
Open. What does that mean for the U.S. economy? Well, the Congressional Budget Office is now forecasting 2% growth for Q1 of 2026. That is the good news. The bad news is that it also...
Okay, but the Budget Office is projecting growth after he fired the statistician that was telling the truth about how our economy has been struggling ever since Trump took office. So, like, how can we even trust these numbers? And I'm saying that legitimately. So
says the shutdown cost $11 billion. It's billion with a B. And we talk about all these federal workers that went without pay during this record shutdown. Well, they are legally obligated to receive back pay, and air traffic controllers are amongst that group. We heard from Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who said that they would receive 70% of that back pay within 24 to 48 hours of the government reopening.
No, it needs to be 100%. Again, the government spends money into existence. It's not like somebody at the IRS building has to go into a vault of cash, grab cash, stuff it in an envelope, and then mail it out. Most of our finances is digital anyway. It's literally a keystroke. Whether or not we were a fiat currency, our systems are maintained by computer. So we already have their deposit information. We already have their address. We already know how much we fucking owe them. Enter. This isn't fucking rocket science.
It'd get 30%, that remaining 30% later on in the upcoming weeks. Now, some of the other things that are part of this spending bill, we know that SNAP and WIC are now fully funded through September of next year. Also, we've been tracking the Smithsonian Museum's closures. They are now all set to reopen by November 17th. The federal government now fully funded through January 30th of next year. And those are your facts and figures.
Great. So we're funded for 2.5 months. No, 1.5 months. No, 2.5 months. Sorry. So can't math after all of this just brain drudgery of this administration just going at it, right? So 2.5 months worth of federal funding until 67 days. So actually, I guess closer to just 2 months. 2 months and a week. So yeah, we're just I don't. If the game plan of this administration is just to keep the chaos going for as much as possible while they consolidate power, they are on the right track. But at some point, it's going to have to give, and people are going to be having to say and do something about it. Otherwise, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse as these chaotic events continue to happen. Yeah, no, we may have another shutdown in January. Yes, 100% we may. Yep, that is an absolute thing. Just another reason states need to cut the amount of federal taxes we send in. Yeah, no, listen. Starting January 1st, I'm not paying federal taxes anymore. Nope. I mean, I want my federal tax returns for all the money that I had to pay this year, but given it by how straight up corrupt this country has been, like, I'm not paying taxes. I'm just not going to do it. And I don't think anybody should. If you truly, again, that is an act of protest. And it's the only protest that they will respect, is not giving them free money. Because that's what taxes are. Free money for the government. We work, we get paid, we do stuff, we earn money, and then for some strange reason we have to give it to our government so that they can now terrorize us in our own homes. And surveil us in our own homes and make our lives miserable or worth even less than what it already is. The government is gonna make it easier for corporations to force us to work more for less. Like, no. Why on earth would we give our money in the form of tax dollars to the federal government? Especially this administration. No. Send it to your state government instead. They are open and running and doing the jobs they are paid to do. Your local government is good. No, that's kind of the problem in America. State and local aren't that much better, but they do operate more directly from the funds that they receive. It's also an interesting idea that the state could be a, what's the word? Oh, dang it. I think it begins with a C. And it's not a courier, but a handler isn't the right word, but it's along the... So, like, if you give the federal tax dollars to the state to hold on to until the federal government stops acting the fool, if that was a system that was in place, all of the states could literally hold the government accountable through tax dollars. But the problem is, right, that the states rely on federal money. So it would revert, it would have backlash effects. But if the people didn't pay the federal taxes outright, then the government would start hurting. And they are already cutting the IRS. They're already making it harder for the IRS to do its job. And all of those systems are already compromised. So, like, how are they going to go after, every working class American? Of course, it would require every working class American to do it. But, I would rather the $86 billion my state paid in federal taxes go into the state coffers. I mean, for $86 billion, my state could fund SNAP, welfare, housing, healthcare, and everything else for every person in our state for 3 years. Exactly. So, and that's the federal taxes that would be spent every single year. So really, there would be a surplus of funds for the states, which, novel idea. Meanwhile, the feds are sending our money to Israel, Argentina, developing fascist secret police, deploying our military into our cities, committing war crimes in the Caribbean. I mean, it's just, again, I don't want to support that. I don't want to fund it. I don't feel like, and they're not even funding Medicare anymore. Literally, our tax dollars are now literally funding tax breaks for billionaires. You may as well write a check to your favorite billionaire. And crazy thing, there are only 902 billionaires in America. So, because of 902 billionaires, we don't have Medicare funding anymore. We have a secret police. We're deploying the military into our cities. our infrastructure is crumbling, and we're committing war crimes in the Caribbean Sea and in Palestine. So no, why should we be paying for those things? Absolutely fucking not. Right, and trying to overthrow the governments of the global south. And that includes Africa. So, yeah, no, this is absolutely insane. And honestly, I would love to try and fight that in court. Obviously, I would need the money for a lawyer to do that, but I would love for that court case to go up. It's like, it goes against the very ideal of a country, of a federal government, and the constitutionality of what this government is doing. I'm not going to fund it. Nowhere does it. I don't think. Let's see. Constitutional references. Congress can levy taxes, but do citizens have to pay them? Let's see. Citizens, according to the... Okay, IRS. There have always been individuals who argue taxes are illegal. They use false, misleading things. Article 1, blah, blah, blah. The 16th Amendment. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on income from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration. So, they say that, according to the Constitution, that there is several amendments that give Congress the right. Does federal spending itself have to be constitutional? So, crazy thing, the spending clause of the U.S. Constitution gives Congress broad power to authorize spending for the general welfare. The necessary and proper clause supplements the spending authority, allowing Congress to restrict how federal funds are used. Congress can also place requirements on the recipients of federal funds to regulate their conduct in exchange for federal funding, which is crazy because that's how Bush manipulated our education system. If you don't do my curriculum and my No Child Left Behind, you don't get funding for schools. And it's the same thing this administration is doing. If you don't play by my rules, I'm not going to give you federal dollars. All right? But it's supposed to be for the general welfare. So how is cutting Medicare and giving $3 trillion in tax breaks to 902 individuals the general welfare? So I would in fact argue that this administration is unconstitutionally allocating our tax dollars, and I want to argue that. And I want that to be a class action. And I want some muckety-muck lawyer to take on this case and drive it all the way home to the Supreme Court. Because this right here, the stuff in purple, is exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about. All right. Okay. Let's get riled up. Are we ready to get fully angry and enraged? Because
we're still sifting through the result.
Oh wait, that wasn't the video.
Immigration crackdown.
Dozens arrested by federal agents in North Carolina. Immigration crackdown. Again, the fact that the headlines aren't "federal agents kidnap and terrorize brown people" is just proof that this is all state-sponsored terrorism and propaganda. But let's get good and angry, right? You guys have too much money in this world. If you cut 10% of individual spending on Christmas gift, that's more than other national expenditures a year. Not arguing with you, bub. But to that point, we have all this wealth in America, and yet we're still living in damn near poverty, paycheck to paycheck. So, do the math. There are more videos about this at the bottom of the playlist. Great. Let's get good and riled up.
In Charlotte, North Carolina, dozens of people have been arrested or detained by federal agents despite protests from the mayor and other...
Arrested or... Again, wait, did he say protesters?
People have been arrested or... To the immigration crackdown in Charlotte, North Carolina, dozens of people have been arrested or detained by federal agents despite protests from the mayor and other local officials. ABC's...
So, again, the only resistance to this fascist bullshit is lip service by public officials. Again, a mayor could order the police or the sheriff's department to arrest the federal agents for conducting themselves outside of their jurisdiction. That's actionable. That is well within their rights to do. And they're not. Meanwhile, ICE is arresting everybody without cause, without due process, without a warrant, and without seemingly the desire or need to provide one. Because the longer this goes on and the longer this becomes normalized, you have these people pointing guns in civilians' faces. You have these agents literally ripping people out of vehicles and leaving children in the back seat. They are acting with impunity, and they are being supported and aided and abetted by the simple fact that they aren't being held accountable. So the more this becomes normalized, the worse it's going to get, and then that will become normalized. The more you give to these people, the more of an inch, the more lines you give them, the more they're going to try and take. Again, we have to do something about this. We absolutely cannot allow this to continue unchecked.
Faith Abube reports from Charlotte tonight.
Tonight, dozens arrested in Charlotte, North Carolina. The Department of Homeland Security officially announcing Operation Charlotte's Web, saying it's...
And then they're naming it these extremely just caricature things. Charlotte's Web. Really? If this was in a novel or in a movie or in a just like a 1984 style book, and they said that some act was called the Charlotte's Web or the Caesar's Palace or whatever, like, you would be like, come on, there is no way. We are worse than fiction. Should point out 21 House Republicans announced they won't be running for re-election. We have a real chance to get real progressives elected. No, that would be 100%. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I feel so confident in running for Congress. I don't have the funds that I would like to have, but I do believe getting the message out there is feasible and thus winnable.
Targeting, quote, the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens. Gregory Bovino, the Customs and Border Patrol commander overseeing the operation, on social media touting...
I mean, these guys look like Nazi stormtroopers. They all fucking do. It doesn't stop. We're going to go ahead and skip. They also said the worst of the worst, right? This is a workplace. This is an apartment. Like, this is just a suburb community. There was a guy that was, again, workplace.
Dozens arrested in Charlotte, North.
This is just out in the middle of the street. So they're going after the worst of the worst people in places that regular people tend to be. Like, I'm not buying it, and neither should you, and neither should the American people. We should be collectively outraged that this is happening.
Throughout the weekend. In one encounter, masked agents seen smashing in the window of this car. The man inside telling our affiliate WSOC he was stopped twice Saturday morning, but was released both times after showing proof he's a U.S. citizen.
Again, just, and who's going to pay for that window? Not ICE, or at least they're not going to be held accountable soon enough for that to matter to this guy. So, like, and he was targeted, he was racially profiled twice by ICE. And thankfully was able to prove both times that he was an American citizen. This is literally, zeig mir deine Papieren. Show me your papers. And that's literally what they're saying too. Like, again, this is not a parallel to Nazi Germany. This is the exact line that Nazi Germany was treading. The only minor difference between Nazi Germany and America is the amount of profit people are making off of it, and the fact that it's against immigrants instead of the Jewish population.
Give me your status. Give me your papers. I say, why?
open the door, say, I not open the door.
He says he was injured during the second encounter when agents pulled him from his car and threw him to the ground.
I got pain. It's not terrible, but I got pain.
The DHS responding on social media, quote, during an enforcement operation in Charlotte, this individual became erratic, refused lawful commands, and had to be removed from his vehicle.
How is it a lawful command if ICE does not have jurisdiction over American citizens? Right? The clap emoji. Like, ICE does not have jurisdiction over American citizens. Only immigrants. That's it. That is it. So it is not lawful. I'm an American. I don't have to listen to you. Go away. But if they get to now terrorize you anyway and assault you or destroy your property, guess what? Then they have that authority. They shouldn't, but until they're held accountable, they do. And that is how authoritarian regimes become. I mean, if without accountability, this is what you get. And again, if it can happen to this guy, it can happen to you. Because once they're done terrorizing the Latino community, you bet your ass they're going to come after anybody. Why aren't you having a Trump sticker? Why don't you have a Republican this? Why? Show me your papers. Hey, this is an immigration checkpoint. Everybody needs to show me their papers. Like, where does it stop? That's the point. It doesn't. It only escalates. Honest to God green shirts. No, 100% agree with you there. They are just abusing brown people. Why are they breaking windows? I mean, and the dude even said, show me your papers. Or that's what he was asked. Show me your paper. Like, you can't, not that you would even want to, but this isn't hyperbole anymore. We literally have brown shirts in America. We literally have the SS in America. And we have people masquerading as ICE as well. And a lot of these people with the masks on aren't agents. They are literal bounty hunters that are getting paid to terrorize brown people, to profile brown people. And they are getting paid with what? Our tax dollars. So, if you want to fund the SS, pay your federal taxes starting January 1st. If you don't want to support the SS, consider not paying your federal taxes. The IRS might come after you, but they don't have the resources to go after all of us. And that's the point. So,
we're still sifting.
Latinos have turned against Trump in massive numbers. Gee. Shocking. Water is wet. Why wouldn't Latinos turn against Trump? In fact, that there were any Latinos supporting him at all is shocking to me, because he was not silent or subtle about it during his campaign trail of what he wanted to do to immigrants. But, okay. Let's hear some of this.
Through the results from those 2025 elections in New Jersey and Virginia. And one of the big questions that has been asked is, where are Latino voters? A Latino voting shift toward Donald Trump in 2024 helped propel him to victory. So what do the results in New Jersey and Virginia show us now? What might it tell us about what U.S. opinions are on the president's immigration policy? With us now, CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton. Harry, a lot going on constantly on the issue of immigration.
Why did they just give him like a rock star introduction? He's not a rock star. He's really off-putting, to be honest.
And immigration crackdowns, the Latino vote, what are we seeing among the polls there?
Yeah, what are we seeing? You know, one of the big shifts in 2024 from 2020 was that shift towards Donald Trump, right? Immigration played a key role in that. I want to start off with Latinos on Trump and immigration. You know, back a year ago, what did we see on the issue of immigration? Latino voters trusted Kamala Harris more than Donald Trump, but by just 2 points. 1, 2. Look now at Donald Trump's net approval rating on immigration among Latinos. He is 38 points underwater. That is a 36-point shift, essentially, from where we were a year ago on immigration. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are basically tied on the issue of immigration, and now...
Which, honestly, is an indictment of Kamala Harris. How do you be an opposition candidate to Trump and be neck and neck on Latino voters when one of the positions of Trump is to get rid of brown people. All you have to do is say, that's a dumb idea. Boom! You win the Latino vote because they're not going to get terrorized by you. But instead, what does this dumb bitch do? She says, I'm going to be harsher on immigration than Trump is. Bruh, you had an open book test with internet access to win, to pass, and you still failed. It's worse than like failing because you didn't even put your name on it. You did put your name on it, and you did absolutely none of the homework and used none of the tools at your disposal. So like, to me, this is an indictment of the Democrats more than it is a failure of Trump revealing his true colors.
Now, on the issue of immigration, Latinos despise, hate Donald Trump. 38 points underwater. In their mind, he is doing something absolutely wrong when it comes to immigration.
What about the Latino vote overall?
Well, yeah.
What about the Latino vote overall? All right, how do Latinos feel about Donald Trump overall? Let's take a look here. This, I think, sort of gives the game away.
Goodness.
Yeah, oh my goodness. I mean, that is the phrase of the day. Trump's net approval rating among Latinos. In early February, again, he was just 2 points underwater. Look at where he is now. Late October, minus 34 points. 34 points underwater. A shift of 32 points over the course of this year. I should point out this is the CBS News YouGov poll, but I was looking at the averager polls. I was looking at our own poll. Very similar shift. 20, 25, 30-point shifts on the net approval rating away from Donald Trump among Latinos overall. Again, whatever Donald Trump is doing in office, in the minds of Latinos, it is not working. They have turned against him in massive, massive numbers.
Mind you, that the Latino voting bloc in America is 20%. 20% of all Americans are Latino. Followed by, I think it was, 17 or 18% are black? And then, yeah, you got your Asian and Pacific Islander. I think that wasn't double digit. But your two major demographics are the Latino and black voting blocs that are essentially a fifth of the population, respectively. So losing that support is significant. Because not all white people are racist pieces of garbage. And the fact that his net approval rating has also plummeted shows that even amongst his racist base, he's losing support. So, again, it's still too high. Yeah, no. So the thing is, obviously the Latino community is not going to support the terrorization of their own community unless, unfortunately, ideology, right? We've seen that there's a rise of fascism globally. So it's obviously not just a white people problem or an America problem. It's every culture, every demographic, every country has a conservative versus a liberal political bias, right? And that doesn't change just because you move to a different country. If you were conservative in Venezuela, you'd be conservative in the Congo or China or Russia or Germany or America or Canada. If you were conservative in one place, you're going to be conservative in another. It depends on how conservative you are perceived from one place to another, right? In America, if you're conservative, you're Nazis. We are fascist scum on the right to every other country on the planet, right? And even in America, we're beginning to slowly recognize that we're not the good guys. But the other problem is that there are plenty of conservative Latinos who have conservative ideals and therefore would support conservative policies and presidents who happen to be Latino. The problem is they keep forgetting that they are Latino in America and that the party that's conservative is full of racists. So I think that's why the number is as high as it is, even though it is still a low number. All of which is to say,
amid mounting pressure to tackle rising prices at the grocery store, the Trump administration says it's taking action. On Friday, President Trump signed an executive order allowing dozens of products like coffee, bananas, and beef to be exempted from his sweeping tariffs. The move marks a notable reversal for Trump, who has repeatedly insisted tariffs are necessary to protect U.S. businesses and workers. Let's discuss now with journalist Rick Newman. He is a former Yahoo Finance columnist who now authors the Substack, a newsletter, The Rick Report. Hey, how are you, Rick? All right, thanks for being with us. So is this potentially going to make an impact?
I don't think anybody's going to notice, to be honest. So just to underscore what you just said, Frederica, Trump is removing his own tariffs on what is about, I don't know, looks like a couple hundred products. You can find the whole list of products. I mean, Trump says he's focusing on stuff that you can't easily grow or produce in the United States. So it's coffee. That's important. Coffee's up 19% year over year. It's bananas. It's
yeah. Okay. First of all, Jackwad, coffee is very freaking important. Okay. Do not mess with the millennials and their coffee. Okay. Secondly, coffee is not up 20% year over year. Or maybe it is year over year. But Tim Hortons, a large triple 5 years ago was $1.50. It is $2.95 now. So no, that's not regular inflation. That's not 3% year over year. That is greed. That is unregulated industry. And these tariffs are exacerbating it. Okay? So slow your Tootsie Roll there, pal. And don't undermine coffee.
Pineapples, it's mangoes, it's cinnamon, it's cumin, it's capers. So all he's doing is taking away the tax that he imposed on those products earlier this year. I don't think...
Also, he called it a tax. Good on you. But you said it in such a very subtle way. Like, you need to emphasize that this is his tax that he imposed and is now walking back because it backfired.
Those products, or at this point, I don't even think groceries really are the main thing that is what people think of as the affordability problem. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has been getting more expensive and going up in price by more than income. And Trump has not said much about a lot of that stuff yet.
I mean, groceries is just one of the many things that, is hitting people hard. I mean, it's why folks are unable to save. They're spending most of their earnings. So the Trump administration's, Trade Representative Jamieson Greer was asked yesterday whether the president's tariffs have raised costs on Americans. And this is what he said.
Depends what the importers do with the tariff. When you look at the overall price trend, it hasn't been because of tariff. It's been because of these other events going on and just supply and demand.
Is he right?
Oh, okay. So we're debating that. Okay, thank God, because normally even CNN would just play that clip and then move on to the next story. Like, no, bitch, that was absolute bullshit. First of all, prices have been skyrocketing since COVID and the disruption to the supply chain. So we had to temporarily raise prices, and then they were locked in. So whatever COVID inflation hit, which was in some cases a doubling, became the new standard. And then on top of that was the quarterly price profit increase. So let's not. America runs on coffee and red meat. I love that. Ola True Steel, welcome to the stream. I know you join us in chat whenever you can get to it. So welcome. That's why Trump is sporting that new Rolex. It was a gift from the Swedish Prime Minister or Snow Lord or whatever they are. Prime Minister. And yeah, if you bribe and flatter Trump, he'll give you whatever you want. So wonderful that we have an extremely compromised administration that is blatantly and just cartoonishly corrupt.
That's careful parsing. There are a lot of things that affect prices and inflation. Tariffs is one of them. I mean, there are many economic analyses that are nonpartisan on this, and they find that, let's say Trump's tariffs as they exist today, if they stand in place for a year, they're going to add something like $1,500 or $1,800 or $2,000 to the cost of a typical household. So tariffs are we go back to basics. Tariffs are a tax that the importer, which can be Walmart.
At least you're saying that. You know what? I have my gripes with this guy. I really do. He's also explaining it in a very boring professor kind of way, but at least he's calling it a tax.
Target, a wholesaler, or any kind of company, that company, that American company, has to pay the tax to the U.S. Treasury, so their costs go up, and they try to pass as much of those costs onto their own customers as they can, all the way down to you and me. Now, their alternative is just to have higher costs and lower profits, but no company wants to do that. So this is affecting companies and consumers, no matter how you parse it.
Yeah. And then there's new data, showing how tough this affordability crisis is for so many Americans. An analysis by Bank of America released this week shows nearly a quarter of U.S. households are living paycheck to paycheck.
I'm fairly confident. I am confident that number is much higher because of the simple fact that what percent of Americans have a savings of $5,000 or more? So that's a 2024 article. So nearly half have less than $500 in savings. Now, paycheck to paycheck. Maybe I'm an asshole. Maybe I'm just too nitty picky, right? If you have if more than half the country has a savings of less than $500, that's living paycheck to paycheck. Because if you are not living paycheck to paycheck, that means you can go at least one paycheck, at least one, right? Like that would be the most baseline definition of not being paycheck to paycheck. You could go without one paycheck. Now, if your paycheck is in fact $500 and you have $500 worth of savings, you have one paycheck worth of savings, and therefore could be construed as not paycheck to paycheck. But let's be honest. Nobody's rent is $500. Nobody's car plus insurance is a total of $500. Nobody's total utilities is $500, and groceries is typically not just $500. So any one of those individual expenses is already $500. And if you don't have one paycheck, that $500 is gone times 5. For most people, which is why 60% of Americans are living in poverty. So no matter how you slice it, this number is way false and an absolute middle finger to the American public, because this is extremely misleading. This is insinuating that the problem is bad because a quarter of Americans a quarter of the workforce living paycheck to paycheck is not a good sign of a strong, thriving economy. You would want that number to be as close to zero as possible. That being said, the reality is much closer to 50, 60, 70, or 80%. Probably 90% if we're being honest.
This year, they spend over 95% of their income on necessities like housing, gasoline, groceries, childcare, utilities. So is that startling to you?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's worrisome for sure. But so we're calling it the affordability crisis in 2025. Much of this is not new. I mean, the tariffs are a new type of pressure, and Trump rolled those out at about exactly the wrong time. But this is wealth inequality and income inequality.
Hold on, buddy. Whoa. You gotta warn me if you're gonna say something that's based. Did this guy just become a comrade? Do I need to get my... What? I could not have imagined that somebody CNN invited on their show would actually talk about economic problems from the vantage of economic inequality that it is. That's impressive. Then a max a single person can make to get food stamps is 200. Yeah, it's 2,630. Right. And honestly, I think in the state of Ohio, that's too much, to be honest. if you don't have at least 2 months of rent in reserve, you're screwed. No, you're absolutely screwed. And honestly, they recommend 6 months of reserves. And that is not... how many Americans have 6 months of living expenses in reserve? It cannot be. So, 28% of Americans, and yet all of these articles... Okay, here's an August one. More Americans. Okay, but what's the actual percentage? American Rescue Plan Act. What? Okay, that apparently didn't have anything to... What? Oh, was that from COVID or something? Like, right around the... Okay, cool. Anyway. But this isn't giving us a percentage of how many people actually have that kind of savings because... Oh, here we go. 1/3. So, this paragraph kind of summarizes it. 1/3 of Americans with incomes between $50,000 and $100,000 have enough savings to cover at least 6 months' worth of living expenses. Additionally, the gap between high-income savers and middle-income savers narrowed to its lowest levels since May 2020 when it began tracking. So, 1/3 of the country, and I find that hard to believe. I find that very hard to believe. The stimulus fueled from 2021. So they're using a 2021 article after people received stimulus money. Okay. See, this is why I'm saying you can 100% not take these things at face value. And even the sources that this article provided proves that this is extremely biased reporting. So, I'll leave it at that. Most of America is financially screwed, and nobody is talking honestly about it. So, let's see. I did catch up to halfway through the stream, or the list. So, I think we kind of covered most of this. Let's cover the feud,
Tonight,
the
President
Republican
Trump in
infighting.
an escalating feud with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, for years one of his most prominent supporters. At the center of their fight, the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and the push by a bipartisan group of lawmakers, including Greene, to get more information released about his crimes. Today, President Trump writing, Marjorie Traitor Greene is a disgrace to our great Republican Party. Part of a series of posts about Greene, including this one, in which he said he was withdrawing his support and endorsement of the Georgia Congresswoman, saying all I see wacky Marjorie do is complain, complain, complain. A far different tone than the one he's had for Greene in the past.
Hello, Marjorie. She's a warrior. Oh, there she is. Oh, look at her. How beautiful.
Greene has long been one of President Trump's most loyal supporters.
Let's get him back in the White House for 4 more years.
Today saying she is now getting threats following the president's attacks against her, which have been escalating since a lawmaker yesterday posted, "It's astonishing, really, how hard he's fighting to stop the Epstein files from coming out, that he actually goes to this level."
I personally don't really care that they're feuding. What I actually care about is the fact that there is finally a schism that can be taken advantage of in the Republican Party. Because it used to be you had your traditional conservatives and the Tea Party here nibbling away at the corners. And then the Tea Party took over the Republican Party as a whole and just consolidated as a fascist network. And now there are some cracks forming. And I am truly hoping that those cracks start causing actual fissures so that the Republican Party fragments again into your traditional conservatives, your psychopaths, and everything else, so that we can regain some sense of normalcy by taking power away from the sociopaths and starting to use it for good rather than for personal enrichment. So that's all I see. the fact that those two are feuding means that there is now a schism amongst, at the very least, the far right, which is better because the unification of the far right over the course of many, many years is what brought us to the brink of ruin that we are facing right now. If that starts to fragment, that means they are going to start losing influence, power, and elections, which means we can start shifting the Overton window back to where it belongs. So, AI
Do
bubble.
you think we're in an AI bubble right now?
I do. There's a tremendous amount of money that is not clearly sustainable.
Artificial intelligence is transforming everything, from the way we work to the way we think. But as billions are poured into AI startups and trillion-dollar companies race to dominate the field, a deeper question looms. Is this innovation serving society or exploiting it? My name is James Lee, and you're watching Beyond the Headlines on Breaking Points. Over the past 2 years, AI has become the fastest growing sector in history, now worth over $390 billion, with projections topping $3.5 trillion by the next decade, certain to reshape industries, upend the job market, and concentrate unprecedented power in the hands of a few billionaires and private companies. But beyond the glossy demos are growing concerns about ethics, transparency, and who really benefits. Closed source systems like OpenAI and Anthropic are locking away their models, while open source advocates warn that their secrecy breeds monopoly, bias, and a potential national security risk. At the same time, economists are warning of an AI bubble fueled by circular funding.
Okay, this is an 18-minute video, and we're definitely not watching all of that. But this is the point. And my picture here isn't blocking. This is Oracle, right? And there's nothing else over here. It just says it links the cloud, right? NVIDIA is basically converging all of the technology that is driving the AI investment and industry altogether, which is why NVIDIA has been seeing its stocks like double and triple and quintuple all over the place, and they keep having to split their stocks because they just keep making so much money, because all of the AI firms need NVIDIA's technology to do the AI stuff, which is the computational side of things, right? And what's even crazier is the investment from like the big companies like Microsoft, AMD, and Intel, who are at the head of the AI learning and the AI technology itself. What I'm not seeing here is Alphabet, which is the company name for Google, and Google 100% should be in this somewhere. So I'm not certain at all why they are not listed here. But hey, the fact of the matter is, this is a consolidation of all of big tech into the major big tech names like Oracle, OpenAI now, but Microsoft, Oracle, and NVIDIA, Intel, and AMD, those were your big names in the tech industry, and now OpenAI is the epicenter of the AI technology itself. So this consolidation is no different than any other monopolization, which is what he was talking about. And the bubble is limited because it's literally one friggin' company. So like, this is not sustainable. It's an absolute astronomical amount of money that constantly inflates and reinflates itself, right? NVIDIA is only worth $4.5 trillion because people keep buying NVIDIA to buy stuff. NVIDIA can then invest in the others, which further inflates their valuation, right? This is all fake money. This is all just monopoly money being passed around. Whereas like the acceleration of money in a local economy, if you spend $50 at a local store, it goes to another local store, which goes until like 12 or 15 local places have used that same $50, right? It's the same thing, but at a multi-billion, multi-trillion dollar level. So that bubble is no different than the the internet.com bubble or the crypto bubble, which we seem to be dealing with presently as well. So, with that being said, it looks like the Senate did unanimously pass the bill.
Back with some
and now
breaking
it's
news.
making it to Trump's desk. So how quickly the news changes, because I think at the beginning of our stream we were talking about how it was still being discussed. Well, it was passed. But the question is Trump actually going to sign it?
In our politics lead, a major update on that Senate vote to release the Epstein files. Let's get right to CNN's Manu Raju on Capitol Hill. Manu, we didn't even know if the Senate was going to take up the Epstein Files bill. What is playing out right now?
Yeah, just a couple weeks ago, it seemed like this bill was dead on arrival. Just a few days ago, it seemed like it was dead on arrival in the United States Senate. But now it is on its way to the president's desk in a remarkable turnaround, in an extremely fast move here. The Senate has essentially green-lighted this bill to be approved as soon as tonight and be sent to the president's desk. Now, essentially what happened was that in the aftermath of this House vote this afternoon, 427-1, just one member of the entire United States House voting against it. This is now on its way to the Senate. Now, there has not been a formal process. It has to be formally sent over to the United States Senate. That process was to take some time to get through the official writing of getting the bill over across the Capitol. It's an arcane process. But once it gets over to the United States Senate, that's when the bill can be read in the Senate and essentially passed. So what we just saw moments ago was Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader. He went to the floor of the United States Senate and he said, he asked for what's known in the Senate as unanimous consent. That means that all 100 senators have to agree, or one senator could object and slow things down. He asked unanimous consent that for when the Senate receives the final paperwork of the bill that just passed the United States House, that it would be approved by the United States Senate. Nobody objected to that, Jake. So what that means is...
You know, I get that the optics of it is there. Like, hey, we're going to unanimously come together to finally lay this controversy to rest and get it all out in the air. But that could have just as easily blown up in his fucking face. Like, what? Chuck, why? Like, this doesn't do anything to benefit you. You weren't the reason why the Senate unanimously supported it. You're not the reason why. Public opinion and it shifting and becoming blown up egregiously over time is why now it's politically expedient to do this. So I don't understand what the idea behind it was other than the optics, but the fact that it could have also blown up in his face, like, that's such a risky thing to do when you wield no power or influence in the Senate at this time.
That as soon as it is formally transmitted, this bill is formally transmitted from the House to the Senate will essentially have it approved. It will be approved in their chamber. There does not need to be a roll call vote, and then it will go to the president's desk for his signature, in which the president has indicated that he will sign, despite fighting this for months, despite the efforts by the Republican leaders, particularly in the House, to try to deny its vote. Ultimately, the president capitulated, said that he believed that the House Republicans should vote for it because dozens were already planning to buck him. And the Speaker of the House, who did not want this bill to come to the floor, ultimately voted yes, which has been a remarkable turnaround, pushed by a handful of members in the House of Representatives, pushing the leadership, circumventing the leadership, forcing this on the floor, ultimately getting the leadership behind this, and now through the Senate in a blink of an eye, and now onto the president's desk. And within 30 days, when this becomes law, Jake, that's when the Justice Department will have to comply to release the files, the Epstein files. And if it does not comply for whatever reason, it has to explain why. But right now, a remarkable moment as the Senate greenlights passage of this bill that has dogged the House in particular over the last several months.
So that's a few revealing things to revelations as well. It can take another 30 days to get to the president's desk to sign. So that's another 30 days that they can drag their feet, which would bring us to Christmas, where it could be buried in the news cycle and outright ignored. And then the the FBI would have another amount of time to What he said 30 days once. So okay, fine. There's a 30-day gap, at which point it could be buried in the news cycle yet again. And then if they don't comply, they have to explain why. And if the explanation is because it would implicate too many members of the federal government and industry and whatever else, like, what happens next? Right? Do the American people finally revolt? Does the Supreme Court finally issue whatever it does? Are there going to be arrests? Is the U.S. Marshals going to get involved? Like, at the end of the day, even crap. Even when the government is held accountable, it isn't, because there is. What's the accountability? What does accountability look like? And where are the ramifications? What are the ramifications? What are the stopgaps? If the FBI doesn't release it and then they give a shitty explanation, can they be held accountable? Can they be forced? Who forces them? Right? Like, there is entirely too much. Sorry, I guess I got a little too animated. There's entirely too much up in the air with all of these things, to where it's just theater to me and the American people. Unless there's accountability and ramifications for not complying, then it doesn't really matter. And that's what we want. We want the accountability. We want the assurance that something's going to happen and that something has to happen. Oh, okay. Our next video, brace yourselves.
We are going to be assembling
Christians in Dearborn, Michigan, plan to march against Muslims. Now, Dearborn, Michigan, we could do the demographics. It doesn't matter. This isn't 1000 AD with Richard the Lionhearted going against Salahuddin of the Saracen Empire fighting over Jerusalem. This isn't the Crusades. Why the hell are Americans trying to stir up religious fervor and war and conflict in 2025? Why are we fighting a religious war on American soil? Why? Also, why aren't hate groups and hate protests and organizations, why aren't they arrested on site? Isn't hate speech a crime? Isn't hate groups a crime? So why aren't we stopping this?
Dearborn, Michigan. We're not going down there to cause trouble. We are simply doing what our First Amendment right gives us.
We're not going down there to cause trouble, but we are going down there to tell Muslims that this is a Christian country and they shouldn't be here, which is somehow not threatening or trouble. Also, your First Amendment right gives you the right to say whatever the fuck you want, but not freedom from consequences. Unless, of course, you're in a white supremacist state.
Which is the ability to assemble. We, the people here in the state of Michigan, do not need to be scared or be afraid to get together anyway.
And see, and this is why I sincerely hate playing these videos where these people speak their part. They don't deserve a platform. They don't deserve the 35,000 views they got from this guy. They don't deserve the views it's going to get from my stream and on my YouTube channel when I post this on YouTube. They don't deserve a platform. And yet we have to talk about it on our platforms to condemn it. Because if we don't, it becomes normalized. And that's the issue. The more these people get platforms, the more it becomes normalized, because their hateful views are being given the credibility of an opinion rather than the heinous belief that they are. So, I think we're going to stop it right there. Spoiler alert, they did march and they didn't get arrested and no consequences for their actions whatsoever. Yeah, we were definitely not about to listen to all that. So that's happening in America. The modern day crusades, certainly not violent yet, but beginning. And then
Jesus is king. No Talmud, no Quran. America's a
I don't even know what to say. Dude is literally burning religious texts to go viral. Is this his video? Oh, this is his video. Like, this is his channel that has 687,000 subscribers. Every single one of those people should be arrested for domestic terrorism. And if you want to argue that ICE terrorizing groups isn't domestic terrorism, okay, fine. That isn't domestic terrorism. Whatever. I'll debate you, but that's fine. Violent criminal acts committed by individuals or groups to further their ideological goals stemming from domestic influences such as those of political or religion. I mean, if we really don't want to consider ICE, racially profiling as an ideological statement of white supremacy and colonization, okay, fine. I will debate you on that, but let's just say for the sake of argument, this motherfucker is clearly ideologically Christian, motivated to target and terrorize and threaten Muslims, religious individual with a group of 687,000 subscribers. Like, this is domestic terrorism. This right here is what domestic terrorism looks like.
We are going to be assembling.
This is what domestic terrorism looks like. This is religiously motivated domestic terrorism. This is the Christian equivalent of trying to enforce Sharia law. And quite frankly, I am actually kind of surprised that we don't have a word for it for Christianity other than the Dark Ages and the Inquisition. So what? Are these the modern day inquisitors? Is that what this is? Because this is, I don't know what we should call it. But the only other words to describe what Christians do in this case would be the Dark Ages, the Purges, the Inquisition, implementing Catholic rule. But it wasn't called that. I don't remember what it was, if it was ever called anything. Rule by the Bible is called what? Biblical law? That's it? So we have Sharia law, which sounds scary, and Levitican law, which sounds scary, but otherwise it's just biblical law. The Corpus Juris Canonici, the fundamental collection of Catholic canon law. Okay, well. Anyway. Modern day biblical law enthusiasts. And they don't even, of course they won't, and they never will. But the fact that they're trying to institute biblical law while condemning Sharia law, which is still religious law, from the same core book, the Torah, which is Levitican law, right? The Jewish law. Not to be conflated with Zionism or Israel, because those two do not overlap. It's just insane to me that they are trying to enforce a Christian nationalism while condemning Muslim nationalism, of which Muslims aren't even advocating for in America. At no point in time did any Muslim in America advocate for Sharia law, Muslim nationalism, any of that. That's why they are in America, because they fled the Islamic terrorism and nationalism in their countries, because we helped implement it. We overthrew the Iranian democracy to get the Shah, or the whatever they're called over there. So anyway, yeah. We're going to watch these next few videos. I am going to try to not lose my mind. And then we're going to end on a scientific thing, to be on a high note instead of being angry on our stream. So these are still with the detentions with protesters as well. But these videos are going to show the violence.
Usted quiebra mi ventana. Tense moments in Charlotte as immigration and customs agents smashed the window of a Honduran-born U.S. citizen in a strip mall parking lot. He recorded the entire ordeal on his cell phone, and the second stop when his truck window was being smashed. He says once the video cuts away, the agents drag him out and threw him to the ground. He was released once he was able to show documentation he was a U.S. citizen, but he was also shaken up with some cuts to his arms from the broken glass. Now, reports started coming in this afternoon about ICE agents launching operations in Charlotte. So take a look here at this cell phone video showing a masked agent questioning two people who were hanging Christmas lights in a neighborhood this afternoon. They identified themselves as U.S. federal agents and asking the men if they are American citizens and what country they are from before driving.
I'm going to try and keep calm. They are driving regular rental vehicles. I'm assuming they're rental vehicles because, I mean, if this is their own personal vehicle, that makes it even worse and goes to show that this is not legal, sanctioned federal activities, because if they were federally sponsored activities, you would need all of the legal stuff to back it up, such as a warrant, which is, again, why I keep needing to emphasize that they are deputizing bounty hunters. And I guess giving them the authority to say that they are federal agents on top of that. So why are they driving unmarked vehicles that look like they were rental vehicles? And why are they terrorizing people in neighborhoods?
Driving away in an unmarked minivan.
Over 140 people were arrested in ICE raids in Charlotte. Here's 3 stories in 1 minute. Many videos are surfacing online of individuals being detained during a federal immigration sweep across Charlotte, North Carolina over the weekend. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the individuals arrested had criminal records. The city of High Point is warning residents about the impersonation of city inspectors. There have been multiple reports of people falsely claiming to work for the city and demanding payment to perform inspections. High Point officials say that several city departments do conduct inspections, but emphasize that inspectors will never request or accept payment directly from business owners or tenants. Meal kits are being packed for families in need ahead of Thanksgiving. On Wednesday, November 19th, Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools is collaborating with Bank of America and Food Lion to distribute meal kits for families in need as the holidays approach.
Very brief snippet on the brutality of ICE agents, fraud, and the fact that there is a little bit of addressing to the poverty issues that are occurring. In 1 minute. Okay. And then protesters.
Protesters gathering in Charlotte, North Carolina tonight, angered by the Trump administration's decision to deploy federal immigration agents to their city. ICE officials arriving Saturday, eyewitnesses capturing several incidents, masked agents taking people into custody. Willie Asatuno,
The fact that we keep reporting, or that they keep reporting, that they are taking people, that it's masked individuals taking people into custody, instead of saying masked individuals kidnapping people in broad daylight, you're already referring to them as masked individuals. Just take that extra step and call it kidnapping, which is exactly what it is. Have some fucking courage. I promised I would stay calm, so I'm gonna...
Doran-born U.S. citizen says agents stopped him twice, and on the second stop broke his window and pulled him out of the car. He says he was released after showing documents proving his citizenship. In another incident, border agents questioned 2 workers hanging Christmas lights in Reba Hamilton's front yard.
Randy, they're in our yard.
Those agents left without making any arrests. Paula Walker Coleman sharing this video, telling ABC News she witnessed agents arrest this woman who was filming. Ahead of the arrival of ICE agents in the city, Democratic lawmakers in Charlotte speaking out.
What a way to govern, where we have had community members, elected officials, even reporters on these fact-finding missions just to find out whether a federal force is coming into the city of Charlotte.
President Trump has ramped up immigration enforcement in recent months in cities including Chicago and Los Angeles. The administration defending these operations, saying in a statement, there have been too many victims of criminal illegal aliens, and President Trump and Secretary Noem will step up to protect Americans when sanctuary politicians won't. But North Carolina Governor Josh Stein said Friday that most of the people detained have no criminal record and some are U.S. citizens. Perry Russum, ABC News, New York.
For a clip that talked about protesters, there was a lot more about the brutality and Nazi behavior of these ICE agents. And I'm trying to keep cool. It's the same issue I have when I watch these videos about Israel committing atrocities against Palestinians. I take this extremely personally. I take this extremely personally because this is Nazi behavior. I have German heritage, and therefore I take it even more personally because part of my lineage, part of the German guilt that I have for having German lineage is that my ancestors were part of this. Whether against their will or not, they were around when this shit happened. Or my country is at the very least responsible for it. So to see it happen again, not once but twice, in parallel at the same time, Israel, Zionism, massacring Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, United States, America, terrorizing black and brown people with our tax dollars on our soil, doing the exact same things, show me your papers, dragging people out of their homes, out of their schools, out of their workplaces, terrorizing them in broad daylight, kidnapping them off the street, and then even sending them to concentration camps whilst building concentration camps. It fills me with a rage that I can scarcely describe. Add to that I served my country in the military, that I served in the active duty Air Force because I did want to serve my country and give back to the community in the country that I so hold dear. To see us fall to these lows in modern times, to see how many Americans, how many citizens, how many people within our borders are not only supporting this, are full-throatedly celebrating these atrocities, fills me with a rage and disgust and contempt I struggle to contain. I struggle to contain. And I work with some of these people. And I have to work with some of these people. And it takes everything in my body to not lash out at them when they try talking about this around me. I have gotten into confrontations like, if you're going to say this, get out of my fucking office. I can't report you to HR for this. I can't get you fired for this. I can't do anything about this other than tell you to get the fuck out of my face. So, these videos and these topics are extremely difficult for me because they are culturally and morally very personal to me. So, I apologize if I'm losing my cool or if my demeanor changes from lighthearted streamer to angry revolutionary. Okay, so we got pop culture here. I just saw Sam's post. That is such a bunch of crazy people who can't handle people who are born of a religious they don't share. The regime said that ICE is leaving Charlotte on Friday and moving their crimes to Louisiana, which is crazy that they are now starting to invade conservative states, Republican states. Of course, they're not publicizing it as much, but they're still doing it. He wouldn't have them go there unless there's blue leadership. Well, that's the thing. Most population centers in America are Democratic because when you have a diverse population, you're not going to typically support conservative, regressive ideology because you experience diversity and realize it's not a bad thing. So, not surprising, to be sure, but I would say red states, even with blue cities, are still mostly red. And the idea is, well, if we can do this under the radar, we can get away with it. But now that tide seems to be shifting socially, if not publicly, and certainly not through the reporting. The reporting seems to do a very mild amount of pushback. They won't call the kidnapping what it is, although they do continue to emphasize the fact that it's masked agents. So it is a step in the right direction from where it was even a few months ago. We'll take some progress over no progress. I think over Palestine and ICE, I will have to cut off certain family members. I already have. And to the point, I have had family members call me a Nazi over Palestine, saying that my ancestors killed their ancestors. And I was like, okay, then that is that, because I'm certainly not going to take this kind of abuse. And mind you, my stance was Israel shouldn't be committing genocide against Palestinians. That is why they called me a Nazi, because I said that Israel massacring Palestinians and slaughtering them in violation of the Geneva Conventions generally is a war crime and should be wholeheartedly condemned. And I got called a Nazi by family, by Jewish family, for saying that about Israel. So, I 100% can relate. Although I don't want to end our stream on this somber note, I would like to talk about the science, which is this.
So, let's discuss.
So, Anton Petrov... Oh, this was a year ago. Okay, well, I saw it a few days ago that we discovered the life form... so, it's... What is it? Oh, he's not going to explain that here. So Luca is like the progenitor organism that all other organisms, ourselves included, plants included, animals, the whole 9 yards, derive from. So we're not going to watch the whole video because it's 12 minutes, but let's see where he gets into.
Which, if you go on Google, takes you to this. But that's not the Luca we're looking for. Okay. In this case, we're going to be discussing the last universal common ancestor, which is essentially a concept in evolutionary biology that refers to some kind of an organism that pretty much everything on Earth
Let's go straight to
life started on Earth pretty much almost right away. But naturally, as we discover more and more bacteria and archaea and analyze more and more genes, the evolutionary models for all of this will most likely improve as well, and we will definitely get even more information about Luca in possibly the next 5 years. The last paper about Luca was about 5 years ago, and so assuming the same progress, we might get even more detail by 2030. But when it comes to trying to figure out what kind of Earth all of this began on, that's maybe not the question we can answer yet. At this point, we still are not entirely sure what kind of an Earth this was and what sort of atmosphere, minerals, and geology it contained in order to help life begin and in order to help Luca eventually evolve into us. And so in that sense, these are great studies, but when it comes to geology, we're still not entirely sure what kind of a planet we should be looking for in order to find something extremely similar to planet Earth. And so on that note, once we have some more additional information, we'll come back and talk more about this in some of the future videos. Until then, thank you for watching, subscribe, share this with someone who loves it.
Okay. I skipped the science part because, well, quite frankly, we don't have the time for it. But the idea and I'm surprised he has a 1.5 million subs because it was difficult to hear him, and this is some really bad editing. But hey, I guess when you have 1.5 million subs, you can do whatever the hell you want, right? So to wrap things up on that and then the stream is Luca is an organism that existed during the early formative nature of Earth, which was basically a volcano planet, right? Think Malifaux? Was that what it was in Star Wars Episode 3? You get where I'm going, right? The lava planet. That was essentially Earth 3 or 4 billion years ago when Luca first started to form. And so when we are looking into the stars for signs of possible life, we look for Earth-like planets, right? And we find them. There are, I think one of them is KB12 or something, and it's like twice the size or 10 times the size of Earth and this, that, and the other, right? But we're also wanting to find out what planets might have the precursors of life that may have developed in the time it took for that light to reach Earth. So the ramifications or the implications of Luca is this could have the circumstances that allowed Luca to form, the original life form, could be spotted broadly throughout the cosmos, which might imply that life, as we understand it, might not be altogether that uncommon at all. But the form that it takes or the conditions that create it could, in fact, be scarce, or they could be broad, or whatever else, and we can then start searching for it and maybe find planets on the various stages of what we would consider life. So, Mustafar. Yes, Mustafar. That is what I was thinking of. Thank you. So, with that being said, some Star Wars trivia there. Thank you all for watching today. Thank you for joining us. We are trying to keep the stream not light, but also not overly heavy because I get stressed out. And if I'm stressed out, y'all are stressed out. So, we're trying to keep the streams balanced, if you will. But we did cover a great deal. We covered the Epstein Files, the ramifications of shutdown, ICE, of course, and the schism between the party. We covered, corporate greed and corruption. So we are covering lots of broad topics. If we aren't covering something that particularly interests you, stay tuned anyway. Come back in 5-15 minutes. We'll probably be talking about something that does interest you. So with that being said, thank you for joining us. It has been a lovely stream. We stream, as you can see, Tuesday through Thursday, 7 to 10. Tuesdays, like today, we cover domestic affairs, local politics, U.S. politics and policy. Wednesdays, we do foreign policy and foreign news. And Thursdays is a recap of anything that we may have missed or that may have been breaking that day. Now, this Thursday, we will not be streaming because I need to make my debut as a congressional candidate at the Republican offices within my district. So I'm going to go over there and I'm going to go give them a speech, and hopefully I don't get shot because this is a deep red district in Ohio, and the likelihood of them necessarily supporting what I have to say could be slim. But then again, there is a shift in this administration's popularity. So who knows? Maybe we can bring socialism, Ronanism, into the Republican Party vis-a-vis this campaign. So with that, I guess it's 3 minutes early, but no need to drag out a farewell longer than it has to be, right? With that being said, everybody, you have a great night. Like, share, subscribe to the channel and the stream and all that fun stuff. Let people know, bring them on board, and let's make a difference. Samuel Ronan, your president, out.